Hey everyone, thanks for joining the show. This is Dreadnought Ryan, and I have a special guest. He's known as the Swordsman. It's Matthew Comstock. Mr.
Hello.
Comstock, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And today we're going to actually talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, but it's the Cold War. As a child of the '80s, the Red Scare, uh, bomb shelters. You'd have to do bomb drills, different things like this. I know a lot of kids don't have that experience today, but growing up in the '80s, you were always scared of the next nuclear war, and it seemed like we had movies or TV shows that always dealt with the Cold War. So, and I thought, what a better expert to bring on than Mr. Comstock, because not only has he introduced me to a great Facebook group, but he's also pointing me into the direction of a couple different shows that I hadn't seen. So, welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's also near and dear to my heart, and something that I dealt with very much growing up, where I did in Norfolk, Virginia. The largest naval base in the world, the U.S. headquarters of NATO, and where all the U.S. Navy's ballistic missile submarines were based. Um, so we were always high up on the target list.
And I think too, you probably saw, a lot of where, like you're saying with those bases and stuff, espionage, because we need to know where those subs are. They need to know where the ships are. NATO's there, all of that stuff. So, I bet you some of these movies and TV shows that we have are pretty much based pretty close to where you were at. So,
And there's actually a very famous spy case. John Walker.
yes,
John Walker lived about 2 miles from me as a kid.
no kidding.
No kidding.
Wow.
So I got to see all that unravel in, I think it was April or May of '85. And yeah, that was a very big story around. Of course, a big story all over the country, but that was a very big story here.
Yeah,
Um,
because probably, living so close to you, through people or interactions, somebody knew somebody who knew him, or with everything that happened, it affected people's lives,
yeah,
where us, being on the outside, being in Michigan, I didn't have to deal with that, but having that in your backyard is completely different. So,
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
No. Growing up, my parents' circle of friends, through our church, we had a lot of Navy folks that were in there. Somebody who I'm very close with was actually a very high level Marine Corps intelligence officer. So he knew exactly the level of damage that Walker had caused to the country and probably NATO as a whole.
Yeah. Plus the embarrassment for it happening and nobody catching it until, like you're saying, the damage was done.
Right, right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that leads us to what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about TV shows and we're going to talk about movies. We're going to talk about which ones were our favorite. Does this mean these are the be all end all for them? Absolutely not. These are just some of them that are our favorites. And of course, you guys know of any ones that we forgot or recommend. Add them to the comments, please, and thank you, so that we can watch them again. And let's get started. All right, so there we go. So the Cold War, of course, was the United States and Soviet Union. The Cold War started after World War II. Once Germany was divided up, the spoils of World War II, the Iron Curtain fell, and the Soviets created a number of satellite states to protect their interests from the West. And with that, with the invention of nuclear missiles and nuclear bombs, we started a conflict of the Cold War. Different times it heated up, different times it cooled off, until, of course, the Berlin Wall fell. And then, some of the changes that have happened in Russia. But with recent happenings now with, Ukraine and different things, it kind of has a little bit of that Cold War feel. So we're going to each cover some of the TV shows that we have picked. I'm going to go first, of course. The SR-71 Blackbird. God, I love that plane. It's so perfect. It was a big deal during the Cold War because it was used to spy, not only on North Korea, on Russia, on China, but also during the war in Israel. with the Arab states. So, it's a big part of the Cold War as well too. So my picks.
One of those close up, it was pretty awesome.
Have you? Okay, I'm going to go back. You've got to see an SR-71 then?
Yes, there was an air show back here in the late '80s where they had one. Yeah, it was very cool.
So I've got to see it twice. We had air show here in Flint. We had air show year after year, unfortunately, because this was GM's home. So General Motors is what was built. We had a very large population. We had a small airport where they'd bring in just, the Blue Angels. Seen the Blue Angels, the Air Force team. I can't think of their name. Thunderbirds. Thank you. Yeah. There's like a French demonstration team they had one year. But the one that blew my mind is they had an SR-71 do a flyover.
Yeah.
And then the F-14 Tomcat, seeing that fly over my house just blew me away. But in Michigan, we have a place that's called the Air Zoo, and they actually have SR-71 Blackbird in the museum where you can actually walk up and touch it. It's just amazing. And then once a year, they do open cockpit tours, so you can actually see inside of it. So wow, it's an amazing jet. Absolute crazy that it was invented in the 60s. Just insane. Okay. So for my picks on TV, I have to give a big shout out to you because you told me about the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy series.
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis, aka Obi-Wan Kenobi, if you don't know, Sir Alec McGinnis. I've seen the movie, which I love the movie, don't get me wrong, but the series was so much better. But it was slower paced. It didn't have the normal dramatic scenes and everything, but it was just so well acted, so well written. The story was just absolutely amazing. George Smiley is the anti-James Bond.
Yeah.
And that made me go and watch Smiley's People after that. And it was just still blown away. I mean, this is an amazing show. Absolute amazing show.
Yeah.
So thank you for telling me about that.
Yeah. I love the movie. I, of course, discovered the TV show first after reading the novels. That was something that I discovered when I was in college in the late 90s. And I struggled with Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy at first. And I almost gave up on it at one point. And then I decided to give it a second chance. And I'm glad I did, because I honestly think that Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, there's 3 books in that trilogy. There's Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, The Honorable Schoolboy, and then Smiley's People.
Yep.
Those are probably John le Carré's 3 best books outside of The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, which everybody knows about that. But
love that movie too.
Yeah, but a book like that needs more than 2 hours. So, the mini series clocks in. I mean, it's 6 45 to 50-minute episodes. So it's just under, it's between 5.5 and 6 hours. The book deserves that with all the detail that's in there. I still think the movie did a great job of boiling down the major plot points, but there's a lot of stuff I feel like they cut out the right stuff and left in the stuff that we really needed.
Yes. I think the movie has a lot of very good actors.
As did the miniseries.
Yeah, the miniseries has very good, but George Smiley is the center of the miniseries.
Yes.
And he always looms large in the room when he's there, but they all treat him like the character plays himself to be almost less than. He almost makes people think that they can get one over on him, that he's easy to push around, that he's, and he plays them like that, knowing that he knows, he's the smartest guy in the room being the dumbest. And that overconfidence from the rest of the cast or those characters makes George that much more dangerous. I mean, at the end of it, he played it perfectly to where he took over everything.
Yes.
And even at the end when he's talking to his wife, who, is a serial cheater, she still doesn't get what dangerous a man that George really is.
Yes.
He's just very unassuming, but they don't know the power that man truly has.
Yeah. So those aren't the only 3 books that are about Smiley or have Smiley in them. There's several other ones.
I'm going to have to get those.
So the first book that Le Carré wrote was called Call for the Dead, and that introduced George Smiley. And if I'm not mistaken, I know this is a real quote. I can't remember which book it comes from off the top of my head, but somebody says about Smiley, he has the conscience of a virgin, but the cunning of Satan.
That's so great.
And I wish I could remember which book that came from. That may come from the later books. But he's ruthless when he has to be. And you especially see that in Smiley's People.
Yes.
When he turns the Soviet ambassador.
Yes.
But when he makes all that happen, and he finds out that this is Carla's daughter that's in this sanatorium, and nobody in Moscow knows about it, and he's using KGB funds for her treatment. That's like the perfect way to blackmail him. But even when he does it, he's still wondering, have I done the right thing? Because if you remember that last scene in Smiley's People, where they're all there at the Glienicke Bridge in Berlin, and Carla comes over, everybody is ecstatic but George.
Right.
And Peter Gwilym is like, come on, George, you did it. You won. And he just stands there like Eeyore, and he's like, yes, I guess I did. And he did, but at the same time, he feels sick about having to do that.
Right, because he had to destroy somebody that he had gained that respect for. And, I think it's a bigger picture of, these type of things have real life consequences. And I think that George's character always saw the bigger picture instead of just what was right in front of him. It's that, playing 3D chess, basically.
Right.
And Sir McGinnis was just the perfect actor for that role.
Yeah.
Period. And I kept waiting for him to go, these are not the droids that you're looking for. But he never.
So I can't remember. I think Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy was filmed in 1979. So that would have been after Star Wars. And
yes.
Then I think Smiley's People was 1983.
Yes.
So that would have been the same year that Return of the Jedi came out. But I think one of the best performances in both of those series is the person who never says a word.
Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
Patrick Stewart playing Carla. There's the whole scene in Tinker Tailor where George is telling Peter about, I met Carla once in India, and I tried to get him to come over. He talks about Carla being such a fanatic and everything else. And it was just, Patrick Stewart didn't have to say a word.
Nothing. And he was in Smiley's People and Tinker Tailor.
Right. Because you only see him at the very end of Smiley's People.
But he didn't utter a single
word.
No.
No.
But very powerful performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and
So well written.
honestly, like if you enjoyed the shows so much, you really should do yourself a favor and pick up the books.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. It's when we get to the movies next, there's one that I found that I didn't know about until later, and then once I figured out all of these movies that it's in, we'll cover it. But
Okay.
The British Cold War spy movies, TV shows, I have a great appreciation for them now at my age
Right.
than what I did when I was younger. I appreciate the slowness, the deliberate, how the actors interact with one another. You have to pay attention because a small interaction in a restaurant, and with the way that in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, or maybe it was Smiley People, where they're eating dinner, and the gentleman that George is eating dinner with, it treats the wait staff like shit. And
oh no, that's Tinker Tailor. That's Roddy Martindale. That's like very, where they're having dinner and they're talking about, all the things that have gone on since Jim Prideaux was caught in Czechoslovakia, and now Control's dead, and George, you've been fired. What's going on? They're catching up on gossip.
Yep.
And Roddy Martindale is one of those people. We all work with one of them, I think. He's very self-important. In the second book, The Honorable Schoolboy, where George becomes head of the service, Roddy becomes even more of a snake. And you thought you disliked him in Tinker Tailor, but you really dislike him in Honorable Schoolboy. Just a very, very petty bureaucrat.
Yes, and he looks down on George, not understanding exactly how much power George really has.
Right.
So, the other one, The Americans, which is another great show. I believe that was out on. Oh God, I can't remember which channel. I've seen it on like.
On FX.
Pardon?
It was on FX.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But one of my favorites to go back to is Macgyver. I absolutely love Macgyver, and it had so much Cold War interaction, either in Eastern Europe or Russia, or just something to do with something stupid.
Yes.
It was so 80s and so perfect.
I think my favorite episode was there was one where he starts out and he's in East Germany and he's trying to rescue somebody. And they basically get through the border crossing, but then he finds out one of his friend's wife is actually in East German plant. I can't remember the name of the episode, but and there was another one too where he was in Afghanistan and he was like flying a hang glider.
Yes, yeah, it was the parachute from the satellite.
Yes,
that fell, and he put together a hang glider.
Yeah. And then I think in that episode, didn't he get shot in the shoulder?
Yes,
he got shot in the shoulder, and then we all learned that new word, cauterization, and what that means.
And then you're like, I don't ever want to have that happen to me.
No, but yeah, exactly. I was like, I hope I never get shot in the shoulder, and I need to be cauterized.
Well, and the best thing about it is, and what's funny about it is, executive producer was the Fonz, so it's Henry Winkler,
right?
But each episode had some sort of moral to it. Like the one you're talking about, Afghanistan, when he didn't shoot that Russian soldier, as they're making their way out of Afghanistan, that same Russian soldier's there with his, basically like tank machine gun vehicle, and he lets him go because Macgyver showed him compassion.
Exactly.
And the kid's like, Macgyver, if you would have shot him, somebody else would have been there and we'd been dead. And you're just like, that was, I think, what we always tried to strive for when we talked about the Cold War, is that, we always saw ourselves on the U.S. side as being the righteous against the evil,
Right.
because of all the things that you saw happen in Germany with the Stasi and the secret police and even the KGB in Russia,
Right.
with what they were doing with, anybody who was a dissident.
Right.
And I think that our entertainment showed that too. The Man from U.N.C.L.E., just absolutely, and I'm talking the old 60s, with Ducky from NCIS when he was in it.
Of course. Of course.
The gun. The funny thing is the gun that they use in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. turns it into Megatron. It's the same gun. If you look at the gun that the man,
I don't think I ever realized that until now.
Yeah, it's Megatron. So I mean, it just keeps tying into everything, and of course GI Joe. I mean, you had the October Guard, you had Cobra. They fought all over the world, and of course, I'm just a big GI Joe slappy.
Right.
Smiley's people and the Saint. So the Saint I found on YouTube because you can watch it pretty much for free. But Roger Moore does some. It's almost like the super secret agent, but it does have some Cold War aspects to it as well too.
Yeah, there's a few episodes, especially when one of the first color episodes. I think he does come up against some Soviet baddies in Switzerland.
Yeah, and they do a lot of like in Turkey and Istanbul and different hot spot areas too. So
yeah, not a big fan of Roger Moore as James Bond.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No, but I love The Saint. And there's another movie. I thought about adding it to our movie list. It's Cold War related in the fact that it would be a proxy war in Africa. But have you ever seen The Wild Geese?
Yes, I love The Wild Geese.
So I love him in that movie. And there's a few other ones. There's Folks. I don't know if you've seen that one or not, where I think it was called North Sea Hijack in the UK.
No, I've not seen that.
He's like this retired Royal Navy diver who now makes money by providing security advice, and he knows that people can take over the oil rigs out in the North Sea, and there's a terrorist group that actually does it. So he leads the charge to retake the oil rig.
I'll have to check that out because I loved him in Wild Geese. Roger Moore was my
Anthony Perkins is the bad guy. So
no, I definitely have to watch it. The first James Bond movie I ever saw was with Roger Moore.
Okay.
So he was my James Bond until my grandfather, who was a huge Bond fan, when VCRs came out, he got he bought the movies, and then I discovered Sean Connery, and I'm like, Connery's awesome. It was Connery's Bond is that true to life John Wayne type action figure type Bond. It's that story where Roger Moore is a little bit more refined. I want to say a little bit more British, but definitely I'm a huge fan of all the Bonds. The only Bond I really didn't care for was Pierce Brosnan. I didn't hate him. I just never was like, eh.
The Roger Moore movies, they had a different tone.
Yes.
In the Connery movies. The Connery movies were very serious, and the Roger Moore movies are a little bit more tongue in cheek.
Yeah, hokey. They're completely hokey. I mean,
yeah.
But still, I mean,
it's funny. It's funny how I'm always a fan of the first movie they do. So, Roger Moore, my favorite Bond movie that he did is Live and Let Die.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
And when we look at Timothy Dalton, Living Daylights was the first Bond movie I ever saw in the movie theater, and that's still one of my top 5. But License to Kill, I could take it or leave it.
Yeah.
If it's on TV, I'm probably not going to watch it. And when it comes to Brosnan, GoldenEye, absolutely head and shoulders above the other 3 that he did. Um, I was so disappointed with. I think like if I have to pick two of his, it's going to be GoldenEye and The World Is Not Enough.
Yeah,
Tomorrow
but I think
Never Dies, and especially Die Another Day. Invisible Cars. Come on.
and with that, with his Bond, it became more of, I call it the Batman phenomenon, where it becomes all of the tech stuff take over.
Yeah.
Where it was always Bond's wit and being able to think on his feet that always saved him in the past.
Right. Right.
And Brosnan, and the other thing too that bugged me with Pierce Brosnan's is, I'm not saying that you can't have a strong female lead, but every female character in every other Bond film played a supporting cast. And it was always Bond against the villain. That was what it's always supposed to be. Those are the two main characters in it.
Right.
And when you try to get other stars extra lines because they feel they have to have them, it takes away from that movie.
Right.
So, all right, I'll get off my soapbox now. Sorry.
So going back to The Man from Uncle real quick. That was in black and white, and I think it was in color later, correct?
Yes, and you can actually find some remasters where it's in color too.
Wow. There is an episode called the Strigas Affair.
Yes.
That has not only William Shatner, but Leonard Nimoy before they were on Star Trek.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, you can go find that out on YouTube and watch it.
Yeah, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Smiley's People, I found on YouTube where you can watch it for free.
Right.
Same thing with Man from Uncle and The Saint are on YouTube where you can watch them for free as well too.
Okay.
And of course, G.I. Joe is there. Macgyver you can watch on Paramount right now. And the Americans it's FX. So you can find that. But that's the cool thing I think about a lot of these is you can still watch them without having to pay for them.
Right.
But if you do buy them and if you like true spy, just great writing, great acting, pick up Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I bought it. I ordered it out of Amazon. I have it on a DVD.
Yeah.
So it's just, you can't beat it. You're right when you said to give the book the due it needed, it had to be a mini series.
Right.
And I think,
but you could say that about anything. You're definitely going to be able to flesh characters out a lot more and retain a lot more of the detail when you've got 6 hours to work with versus 2.5.
Right. But I think there's some IP that you get that you need to give them that 6 hours compared to just cutting it down and putting it to, because the movie is great, but you compare the movie to the series. I mean, you're talking like what, almost 25, 30 years between when they came out, and the series still holds up, and it's from 1979. I mean, I was 3 when it came out.
Yeah,
but it's still just it holds up.
Yeah. And the one thing I want to point out about the Americans in the list here is the other shows that we're talking about, they were contemporary in the Cold War. The Americans is not.
Correct.
The Americans first aired in 2012, 2013.
Correct.
Somewhere around there. But it nails the 80s. And I mean, quite honestly, there's until Bosch came along, I used to say I only have 2 favorite TV shows this century. The first is Foyle's War, which if you've not seen that, that's amazing. And then The Americans.
Yeah.
Because The Americans, it just nails the 80s. And all that stuff was going on. Some of that stuff was going on 2 miles away from me.
Exactly. And with as much nerd culture as there is out there in 80s nostalgia, I am still surprised we don't see more shows set in the 80s, because you know everything that happened, so that, number one, that helps you write everything, but
Right.
it's still fresh enough in a lot of people's minds that people be like, oh yeah, I remember that. But yeah, it's they absolutely, the Americans is a great writing, great, again, I think it goes back to the actors that you have, and
Right.
it's a great story.
Right.
So now let's look at your picks. So of course you had to say yes, all of mine. Of course, I appreciate that. But I'll let you run through them.
Okay, so Airwolf, first of all, so that was 1984, if I'm not mistaken, and it started off, the pilot was actually a feature-length movie that aired on CBS.
Yep.
And granted, I was between 7 and 8 at the time. In September of '84, I would have turned 8. I've already been a G.I. Joe fan for 2 years because that came out in 1982.
Yep.
What kid doesn't want to watch a show about a top secret helicopter that's got a jet engine in it? And there are so many episodes that directly relate to the Cold War. My favorite is one that's called Condemned, where it's after Caitlin has come on. And if I'm not mistaken, it's actually Caitlin's first mission with Hawk. And they have to go to a research facility in the Aleutians.
Yes.
And find out why we've lost contact with them. And come to find out, there was an outbreak of this virus that causes these gross purple bubonic plague-esque legions to pop up on everybody's skin. And then the final stage is madness. So we see the accident happen in this facility, and when one of the research scientists is using a camcorder to film himself and talk about all the stuff that's going on. So not only do they go out there, but of course the Soviets show up because it's right in their backyard.
Exactly.
So you have a Typhoon class submarine, which was the Red October, what the Red October was. So you have a Typhoon class submarine in the background, and you have, the Soviet naval infantry coming on shore, and Caitlin and Hawk watching all this go down. And just like we've seen before in G.I. Joe, sometimes the Americans and the Soviets have to join forces to eradicate the greater enemy.
Yep.
So they both have to work on finding where the cure is in the lab. And they do. But it's just, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything in that episode that I can fault. The uniforms were spot on. The weapons were spot on. There's a lot of drama in that episode. And somebody like Caitlin, who is brand new to all this stuff and wants to be part of the team, she's got to grow up really quickly.
Yeah, and she didn't have that same background as Stringfellow did, because Stringfellow flew in Nam.
Right.
Which we all know that Vietnam was a proxy war between Russia and the United States. We just know that. We repaid them in Afghanistan.
Right.
And if we, the company, let's just call it's the CIA. Archangel works for the CIA. Right, we all know that.
Right.
And if you look at Hawk being, flying these choppers, you have to think that he was part of special forces, so, I mean, that's the only way he could get that top secret clearance to go and fly Airwolf.
Right.
So, he had to be like part of like what we consider now the Night Stalkers. So,
right.
It was just,
right.
Just a really good show. And I mean, the dude's name was Stringfellow, so it was going to be awesome.
Yeah. Well, in the very first episode, of course, it's the creator, Dr. Moffat, steals Airwolf and takes it to Libya, which was, of course, a Soviet client country in Africa, and
Terrorist.
exactly. State-sponsored terrorist, state-sponsored terrorism. Definitely not our friends. He takes it there, but the ultimate stop for Airwolf is going to be the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And there's also another episode in the very first season. We learn in the first episode when Archangel and Gabrielle go to visit String to find out, how much they have to pay him to try to steal Airwolf back. We find out that his brother, Sinjin, was also a CAV pilot in Vietnam, and he went down and he's MIA. And, String says, I don't want the money. I want my brother back.
Right.
And of course, he gets Airwolf, and they find the place in Utah and the Valley of the Gods to hide it. And, he tells Archangel, he's like, I'll use it. However, I'll do whatever you need me to do, but I'm keeping it until you get my brother back. Or
and you knew at that
point kind of
that the Russians had him too.
What's that?
You knew at that point that Sinjin, it wasn't the Viet Cong that had him. The Russians had him.
Right. And there is one episode early in the first season. It might be the 4th or 5th episode, where String is visited by a mercenary that he knew in Vietnam, who says, I know where your brother is.
Yep.
And he gives him a satellite photo of this camp. And, unbeknownst to String at the time, this picture's been saturated with a drug that knocks him out. And, he thinks that he's crashed his helicopter. Yep. And he wakes up 2 or 3 months later. They tell him it's 2 or 3 months later, and he's been in a coma. And this guy that looks just like his brother shows up and says, look, I'm back. They found me. But, unfortunately, Archangel and Dom were killed on the raid to free me from the prison camp. And he's like, you can give Airwolf back now.
Yeah.
And then come to find out the whole thing is just an East German plot to steal Airwolf.
Which at that point, we know that East Germany is really Russia. It's just, it's exactly what it was.
Right. But I think it's like towards the end of the episode, when Archangel finally figures out what's going on, because they've got pictures of some of these people. And he's like, this guy's a known agent of the East Germans. So, but there's plenty of other episodes with Cold War intrigue. There's one where they end up pulling a defector out. There's a few where they go to Latin America and get involved in some of the stuff going on down there at the time.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to rewatch those again.
The sad thing is, I remember when my parents told me it was canceled, and I was like, "What?" That hurt me almost as much to find out that there wasn't going to be another Star Wars movie after Return of the Jedi, because there were just supposed to be 3. You're like, what? There's not going to be another one? There would be, but we'd have to wait. But that wasn't that good of a movie. That's a story for another episode.
That's true, but it wasn't. Yeah. Callahan? Was it Callan?
Callan.
I've never seen that.
Okay, so Callan is a British show from the 60s that has Edward Woodward, who, of course, would be the Equalizer on American screens later on. And he was a hitman for a department of the British Secret Service. And he was responsible, or his section was responsible for eliminating people that were threats to security. So sometimes it might be an IRA operative, because that stuff was going on back then. But a lot of these people were from the Warsaw Pact countries. Or, it might be an arms dealer who's gotten a little out of hand, is now supporting a side that we don't back anymore. So it's just a very gritty show where he struggles with his conscience all the time. and doing things that he finds reprehensible. But if you like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Spy Leaves People and that sort of realistic, gritty spy story, you will definitely like Callan.
I will definitely check that out. Then. I love the.
There's also a fan theory that, and this was never really acknowledged officially, but there's always been this fan theory that Robert Paul, the Equalizer, was once David Callan, and he just moved to America. And because to talk about the Equalizer now, the whole thing was that he had been in that kind of business before and sort of had a belly full of it, and now he was going to use. He didn't really need the money. You give him $100 and he'd solve your problem.
Right, because he was more worried about getting the blood off his ledger.
Right,
by helping people was his way of making that happen.
Right, exactly. So, but I mean, there was plenty of Cold War intrigue in that show too, because you never really had the feeling he was quite out of it.
Right.
Because he would always meet with Control, and he would always help out Control with certain things here or there. So it's like, was he really ever retired?
Nice.
So, all right, the other one on the list, so it's actually 3 different series: Deutschland 83, Deutschland 86, and Deutschland 89. It basically follows an East German soldier who is sent into the West to be a mole and find out everything that he can about certain things in the West. So, it's in German, but you can find it. The copy that I have has English subtitles if you don't speak German. But it's one of those. I'm not quite sure how old it is, but it's like the Americans in the fact that it's recent. It was not contemporary to the Cold War.
You mean it's not, German soldiers speaking in a British accent?
No. So it aired on the Sundance Channel, and then Spybrary, one of the groups that I'm a part of, everybody in there raved about it. I found it on eBay, a used copy. It was like $15, and it's just an excellent show. It's just so well done, like the Americans, and it's exactly what an East German would go through when they looked at the other side of the wall.
And see, that's the big thing is, again, it goes back to, you have to be able to see things from both sides.
Right.
Because like I said, we always thought of ourselves as being the virtuous, the righteous, the East Germans were always bad. And, and they saw us the same way. So, I think that was part of the
assignment. He goes, there's this one scene, I can't remember if it's the first episode or the second episode, where he walks into a West German grocery store and is blown away by not only the fact that there's so much food, but there's like so many different brands and variations of food. And it's like back home, he's like, they told us you guys don't have any of this stuff. And it, so it takes it all the way through the end of East Germany in 89. I have not seen Deutschland 89. I've heard it's not as good as the other two, but I will still watch it because I'm a completist. That's something, if you don't have an issue with the subtitles, that's something that's definitely worth your time.
And I think if it's a great story, you're gonna, it doesn't matter if it's in subtitles or not. If it's a great story, I'm gonna watch it.
Right.
If I have to read, then so be it. I can deal with that.
Right. But I mean, if you definitely want to learn about how the East Germans were so effective at penetrating West Germany, this show's the textbook. So, You know, as you can imagine, when you share a language and stuff like that, it's really not that hard.
No, I mean, if you look at North Korea and South Korea, I mean, that is still a continuation of the Cold War,
Right.
where it was like East Germany and West Germany.
Right.
You know, and a lot of it is because, we want freedom. You have more of an open society, and for, the East Germans, or, even the North Koreans, they come from that, totalitarian state. And, when you have everything locked down and you can't do anything, you come to the West, it's like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that reminds me of a U2 lyric. Freedom looks like too many choices. So that's probably exactly what those people feel like.
Yeah. And, you're like, yeah, we've got all this stuff, and I can see how, a lot of them could be like, we hate you even more now.
Yeah.
So then the Equalizer, which, God, I love that show.
Yeah.
Just love that show.
And, the music was done by Stuart Copeland, who was the drummer for the Police. And I think that was probably his first major gig after the Police broke up.
And I have to say, 80s TV shows had some of the best soundtracks ever.
I mean, those theme songs, right away. It's like Airwolf is probably my absolute favorite, and then probably
Knight Rider.
It's probably a toss up between Magnum PI and the Equalizer for it. It's a two-way tie for second.
Well, you think you had Miami Vice
that too.
With that intro. Macgyver had its own unique intro.
Right.
A-Team, Airwolf, Knight Rider, Equalizer, Magnum PI. If you go to the cartoons, Mask, G.I. Joe, Transformers, they all had just great lead-in music that's tied to them. And then also, they had a lot of artists from that time in history that they would tie those songs into those shows as well too, and it was like perfect.
Yeah, I think Miami Vice was probably the best at doing that. Because I certainly remember Phil Collins being a guest star on an episode of Miami Vice.
Gene Simmons, Frank Zappa,
okay,
Ted Nugent. Sorry, I'm a huge Miami Vice mark too. Sheena Easton. I mean, just over and over and over, all these different. I think, Vanity, was that? She was in it.
Yeah.
But just tying the music to it was just, awesome.
Yeah. See, Miami Vice was past my bedtime.
Oh, yeah. I didn't get to watch Miami Vice. I didn't appreciate Miami Vice, I think, until I had to be like in my late teens. And I think it was like Nick at Night or one of those cable channels had reruns of it. And I was just like,
okay.
Now,
I remember when we were kids, Nick at Night was like Mr. Ed and Green Acres, Patty Duke and stuff like that. I watched Mr. Ed because somebody told me, oh, well, Mr. Ed is Uncle Scrooge. No, not Mr. Ed, but Wilbur. Yeah, Alan Young was also the voice of Scrooge McDuck in DuckTales and actually everything.
Really?
Yeah, and then he passed away. I think it was in 2017. And now it's David Tennant for the new DuckTales. But but that DuckTales game that was on the Wii, I think Alan Young did the voice for that. Yeah, I think that was the last thing he did. He was in his 90s.
Damn.
Yeah. So, Miami Vice was definitely, if I remember correctly, at least here, that was like the 10 o'clock time spot on Friday nights on NBC.
Yep.
And
because it had women in bikinis and drugs and violence. I mean, it had to be on late.
Yeah, and I remember Airwolf. Airwolf was a Saturday show. Um, and then there was another one I threw on. I was tempted to throw on here, and it was borderline, but that was Tour of Duty. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Who do you remember who was in it?
It was a bunch of people that were unknown back then, but it was a show about Vietnam, and it was a CBS show, and at least here, it came on before Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I think I remember.
I'm sorry, it was after Next Generation, because Next Generation would come on Saturday nights at 7, and then Tour of Duty was 8. Because I think, there was, now granted, this was like late 80s. So their definition of graphic is a lot different than our definition of graphic today. But, some of those episodes, like there would be the disclaimer before that says, this show is, depicts graphic scenes of the Vietnam War and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, it's China Beach. That was, a lot of that.
Yeah, China Beach was an ABC show, I think.
Yep. And that was the same thing. It had was that kind of like, I want to call it, Grey's Anatomy, but less Grey's Anatomy. But it was the almost an updated MASH type of show.
Right.
But okay, game, set, and match. I've never heard of this one.
Okay, so we talked earlier about you being a big Harry Palmer fan.
Yes.
You put down Funeral in Berlin.
Yes,
one of your favorite movies. Okay. Len Deighton, who wrote The Ipcris File, Funeral in Berlin, $1 Billion Brain, wrote all those books. In the 80s, he wrote a 9-book series about a similar spy named Bernard Sampson. And the first 3 books in the 9-book series are Berlin Game, Mexico Set, and London Match. Okay, and they proved to be just as successful. A lot of people think they're better than the Harry Palmer books from the 60s. I pretty much give them equal weighting. But in the late 80s, Granada TV in the UK produced, I think it's 15 episodes based on those first 3 novels. And it's the same gritty sort of stuff that you come to expect from a British spy author like Len Deighton, who wrote Funeral in Berlin and all those books that I mentioned. The only thing here, you haven't seen it, and you've not read the books, so I am not going to ruin anything, but I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. Yes, it is a series of spy novels, but the relationships between the characters, whether they're married or it's a boss-employer relationship, that is what really drives this story. Is there, the action you would expect here and there from these sort of things? Yes. But I would say that in the first novel especially, all the action happens at the very end.
It's the build up to it.
Exactly. So think about Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and actually Berlin Game is sort of the same thing. Bernard Sampson finds out that there might be a mole in the Berlin section of British intelligence, and he's got to fish that person out, just like George Smiley has to do. But George does all of George's action takes place in Britain. Berlin Game, Bernie bounces back and forth between London and Berlin. And then when he finally finds out who the mole is, it has disastrous effects for him. And that's all I'm going to say.
Oh, no, I got to watch it. Now I got to find it.
The only thing about this that I don't like, a lot of people who love the books don't like this show. Len Deighton doesn't like this show, and he said that he owns the rights, so it can never be reproduced legally. on DVD or anything else. You can find it on YouTube, but it has great actors in it, but almost every single one of them is miscast. And the reason I say that is because Ian Holm, wonderful actor. Of course, we know him as Ash from Alien.
Yes.
I can't remember the character's name from The Fifth Element, but he was in that too. And then, of course, he was the older Bilbo Baggins in the Lord of the Rings movies. Okay. Ian Holm was like 5'6". Bernard Sampson in the books is about 6 feet tall. And in the first book, he's only 40. Well, when this was first released in 1988, Ian Holm was in his late 50s.
Right. So he
doesn't look like a 40-year-old man. There are some characters that were very well cast, but for the most part, it's a lot of very great British actors that are just not playing the right roles for them.
It's like Jack Reacher. Tom Cruise's Reacher, just no.
Yeah, I pretty much come from a Tom Cruise free home, so
Top Gun. I
Last Samurai is the one that I can't. That's probably the one movie of his that I can't live without.
God, that could be a whole show right there. Yeah, Tom Cruise.
Yeah. If I've got to take one of those, if I've got to take one Tom Cruise movie to the bunker, it's probably going to be The Last Samurai. But no, I agree with you about the Reacher thing. I don't know if have you watched the Amazon show?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. The casting on the TV show was much, much better.
Yeah, because he looks like how I would envision Reacher to look after reading the comics. So
yeah.
The Sandbaggers. This was another one I never heard of.
Okay, also another gritty British spy drama. So it's about a group in the Secret Intelligence Service that they go out and they do the dirty deeds that must be done. So, and there's the drama of the interpersonal drama of a Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, sprinkled with some of the action that you would expect from a Bond film sometimes. Okay, there are explosions and there are people that get shot here and there, but that's probably only going to happen once per episode.
So what you're saying is it's not a Michael Bay production. It's more
not
of a
Michael Bay production at all. And there's all the sort of office politics and backstabbing and stuff that you saw in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and that you would see in Game Set and Match. But it's guys that are there's the head of the section. His name is Neil Burnside, and he's basically outlived all the other sandbaggers. So now that's why he's head of the section. So now, he has to send these guys off knowing full well that if things go sideways, they may not come back. And there's all kinds of, and I mean, that was like late 70s, early 80s. God. And, I remember somebody describing it as like men in bad suits dying very badly. And I don't know if that was a knock on it because it was like late 70s, early 80s, and the fashion wasn't great. It wasn't so great back then.
And I'm sure a lot of it too is, you just didn't have the funds for the stunts and stuff. But again, it goes back to if it's a great story, you can overlook.
Right. And one thing that you'll notice when you do watch a show like, you won't really see this with Game Set and Match, but when you watch Callan, where you watch the Sandbaggers, you will see those low production values that you were that you become accustomed to when you watch something that was made by BBC, or in the case of Sandbaggers, I think was ITV, independent television. You will see those low production values, but you will see great acting and you will see great stories.
It's almost like it's more of a theater production that's been filmed more so than a TV series.
Probably. I mean,
with
you're not going to find a top-notch set.
Well, we go back to Macgyver. I was watching this one where he had to rescue this guy from prison. So he meets this lady at this orphanage, and she's like, "My brother's a doctor, and he was helping, and they put him in political prison." And so he rescues them, and they're driving this Eastern European hearse.
I remember that episode.
And they're pulling down this alleyway, and like at the very back, we're on the street, there's this big blue and white house, and I'm like, oh, they're filming in LA, because that's you're like, but then you go, it's a TV show that didn't have a big budget,
right?
So they had to film where they could film. So you just go, I'm gonna let it go, because it's not about having the perfect set. It's they're doing what they could with what they had.
But that must have been first season, because I think,
yes, it was.
Yeah, and the show hadn't quite proven itself yet, and probably once it proved itself, it's like, okay, we can have much better sets.
But that one, was that the one? No, it was the next one where they're in East Germany, or no, they're in Russia, and they're rescuing this scientist, and with the help of his daughter, and they're racing down this river, which you're going, okay, that's in California too, and they have jet boats. And I'm like, those are both like US made company boats. They're not Russian, but you're like, again, it's the first season, and they're just going with what they
have. So they're escaping in a jet boat?
Yes.
Okay. I thought it was one of those like spaghetti Western mistakes where, they're like filming it and like you see the jet boat in the background.
No.
Kind of like one of the Man with No Name movies. I can't remember which one it is, but there's a scene where they're on a train, and looking out the window, you see a car zip by.
Yes.
Or, there's, I don't think it's one of those movies, but there's another one of the Sergio Leone movies where there's one shot, you see the contrails from a plane in the sky.
But, part of that is they couldn't edit out a lot of that stuff during that time. So,
right.
You learn to just kind of go, I'm not going to nitpick on this. It's just, it's entertaining, and that's all that matters to me.
Well, that's probably the only nitpick I have about those three movies, because I don't think you could ever surpass those movies.
No. And think about, again, where I think a lot of people don't understand is, a lot of these films were done on what would be considered shoestring budgets today.
Oh, those were, especially, I guarantee you all the money went to hiring Clint Eastwood.
So, yeah. But yet they could get a really good film out of it. And they had better script writers, and, yeah.
I take that back. There's probably one movie that surpassed those three, but it would be Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, that was a good movie too.
But also Sergio Leone.
Yeah, because he had that genre down. He just had it down.
That's definitely another episode we have to do.
Yes.
The best westerns.
Hey, it gives us content. I'm good with that. Your final pick is A Perfect Spy.
Okay, so that is also based on a John le Carré book from the mid-'80s. And it's a miniseries that was on PBS Mystery, I believe.
Yes. Okay, I have seen it then.
Okay, yeah, that is based on his 1986 novel, which is probably the most autobiographical novel that he wrote. And it's all about a spy who grows up with a father who was a con man, who John McCrae's father was a con man, and he was basically always one step ahead of the jailer. Had his kids in these fancy public schools, would go pick them up in a Rolls Royce, but the bailiff was always one step behind trying to repossess everything.
And who would have thought that would produce a perfect spy child?
Exactly. But the fact that he is just able to be all things to all people, and that's ultimately his downfall. But that is one of, outside of the Carla trilogy that we talked about before, and Spy Who Came In From the Cold, a perfect spy would go with Me Into the Bunker.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
that good.
I think the biggest thing that we've talked about for all of these is the characters that we've chosen all seem to have this personal conflict, this fatal flaw, and they're being used by all these different people, and yet they're still keep their North Star, if you will. They keep their integrity through everything. Or when they don't, that's when you see the complete downfall of them.
Right.
And they recognize when they have these mistakes happen, and when everything starts to fall apart, they take ownership of it.
Right.
And that's what I think it just would, a lot of these characters all share that type of personality traits. So
they're not superheroes. They're real flawed human beings.
Right. And they're just trying to do the best they can.
I think anyway.
Awesome picks. Now we get to go into the movies. So there's two categories of movies. So I just couldn't pick dramas. I had to pick dramas and action. So
right.
I would start with my dramas first.
Okay.
By Dawn's Early Light. Absolutely amazing movie.
I think I first saw this movie in 1991 or 1992. And it was an HBO original.
Yep.
Which back then was nothing like the stuff they produce now. They were not throwing, I would be surprised if adjusted for inflation, that movie cost $20 million to make.
I think it'd even be less, to be honest with you.
But that movie scared the crap out of me. I saw that, if I'm not mistaken, I saw By Dawn's Early Light before I saw The Day After.
Which is another scare the poop out of you movie.
Exactly. But yeah, By Dawn's Early Light, wonderfully acted. I mean, you've got Powers Booth, Rebecca De Mornay, Martin Landau, James Earl Jones. I can't think of the one guy's name, but he was Doogie Howser's dad.
Yep.
He plays the Admiral.
Was it? I don't want to say it's Rip Van Winkle, but it's
no. You're thinking of Rip Torn, who was the crazy colonel, the Army colonel that said, "No, let's take the grand tour and just completely finish them off."
Yeah,
Colonel Fargo.
Yes,
I watched this about a month ago. I've got it on DVD.
It's a great movie, but again, it showed, I think, how close a lot of times we were to total annihilation.
Yeah. Because they never figure out what exactly happened. All of a sudden, it's just they know, oh, there's been a launch from Turkey into the Soviet Union.
Yep.
at that point, if you remember the history of the Cuban Missile Crisis, part of getting the Soviets to remove their missiles from Cuba meant that 6 months later we had to remove our missiles from Turkey. So they shouldn't even be
there. But yet it
unless,
shows that we left
unless,
those
of course,
missiles there.
we moved them back in, which is possible. But so they never quite figure out how that launch happened, and then it just goes to hell in a handbasket from there.
Yeah, quickly.
And the one thing that I like about it is, like, you see the emotions of all the people that are involved. You've got some people like Rebecca De Mornay and Powers Booth who are just going to do what they've been trained to do, and they don't let it phase them. But then they've got the younger, more inexperienced crew under them that they're freaking out because they're like, oh my God, if they hit the base, like, my family's gone.
Right.
And that kind of stuff would happen on probably every B-52 that was up there.
Yep.
Even though they were trained to do that. They didn't stop. Strategic Air Command didn't stop those B-52 flights until 1992.
That's another great movie too.
They were still up there.
Yeah. We had a base in northern Michigan.
Yeah.
That they ran, all those bombers would run from northern Michigan, run up across Canada through the Arctic, and that would hit
Over
Russia.
the pole. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of nowhere, but it was perfect. Now it's I think Boeing or one of those owns it, where they do a lot of just like testing and stuff out of there. So, and then we go to Mr. Harry Palmer, which, I'm sorry, it's the funniest name ever, but Funeral in Berlin. So Michael Caine stars in this. So for anybody who's seen Austin Powers, this is truly where Michael Caine's character comes from. It's this Harry Palmer.
Yes.
Now, how I found this was not because of the books, but the gentleman who produced Harry Palmer and The Funeral in Berlin, that series, also did Bond.
Yes, Harry Saltzman.
So he had 3 or 4 films with Harry Palmer where I want to say it's like the working class James Bond. James Bond is the affluent, if you would, the spies in Britain at that time came from, the upstanding families. They were the wealthy, the, aristocrats.
Right.
Where, Harry Palmer is this working class slug who hates really what he's doing. He hates his bosses. He hates everything that he does.
Right.
And Funeral in Berlin, he's the only one that's kind of like calling out the bull crap in the whole thing with, this Russian general who's going to defect. And he's like, he's not going to defect.
Right. Right.
And the arrogance of his aristocratic, leadership just kind of shows through. It was such a good movie. Just such a good movie.
Yeah. And, there were 3 of those movies in the 60s. So The Icarus File was the first one.
Yeah.
That was 1965. Funeral in Berlin was 1966. And then $1 Billion Brain was 1967. $1 Billion Brain did so poorly at the box office, they decided to pull the plug. Now, there's 2 movies that were made in the 90s with Harry Palmer where Michael Caine comes back. And they're called Bullet to Beijing and Midnight in St. Petersburg. They were Showtime originals. I only own these movies because I am a Len Dayton / Harry Palmer completist. But they are truly awful.
That's what makes it so great.
They're not movies where it's like, it's so bad it's good.
No, they're horrible movies.
This is not like the spy version of Flash Gordon. Okay, it's like they're not. When we talk about when somebody brings up those movies in some of the groups I'm in, I think all of us do just like a collective cringe because they're just so horrible.
I know it's bad, but I enjoy sometimes. I just enjoy the movie. I mean, if you're on Berlin, he's like, "Can I get 800 pounds so I can buy a car?"
Exactly.
It's or when the Israeli young lady tries to pick him up, he's like, "Who would think that I'm hot? Look at me," But she was all over. So I need you to find out who she is. I mean, you're just like,
right.
It's
right.
everything that James Bond. It's the opposite of, and it's like that's why I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
Right. There's a couple different websites. I think there's one called James Bond Lifestyle, where they talk about all the clothes that James Bond wears, and as a joke, one of them did like a style profile on Harry Palmer in the Ipcris file, and just called out everything that's wrong about how he's dressed. And it's like, this jacket is definitely off the rack, and he's wearing like this knitted tie, and in his you really should keep the pockets on your suit jacket empty, but here he is stuffing in a rolled up newspaper on one side. Obviously he's got keys in the other pocket. It's just like, no proper gentleman would do that.
Yes. Well, and I don't know if you've seen The Kingsman, but I swear with Eggsy, that is a nod to Harry Palmer.
I think so. I do. I have not read the graphic novel upon which the movies were based. But yes, I've seen the first two. So I've seen Kingsman, and then what was the second one called? Was it called Golden Circle?
Yes.
Okay.
I've seen all three, so I own all three. Just but yeah.
And I mean, there's some great actors in there too. Of course, in the guy who plays Merlin, Mark Strong.
Yes.
He was Jim Prideaux in the Tinker Tailor Soldier movie.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's and then of course, who am I? Colin Firth.
Yeah, and Michael Caine's in there as
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. He's in there too. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's kind of it's not a parody. I think it's more of an homage, a pastiche.
Absolutely. And
to all those great British spy movies from back then. I think there's a little bit of Avengers in that. There's definitely James Bond in there, but yeah, I think there's also some Harry Palmer in there too.
Well, especially with Michael Caine being, the head of the Kingsmen.
Right.
And, and Harry's like, you're too stuck up or whatever he says to him. And it's like, that's Harry Palmer. You're saying that to you just kind of chuckle at that point.
One element in the Harry Palmer movies that's not present in the books is the fact that he's basically under suspended sentence.
Yes.
For whatever crime he committed in Berlin when he was there with the British Army. It's kind of hinted that it's like a little black market racket that he had going on, but I don't think we quite know.
No, because they never really cared. And the other thing that cracked me up with the funeral in Berlin is, when he gets picked up at the airport by the basically you find out at the end, spoiler, is a former Nazi, war criminal. He's in a friggin' convertible Cadillac in Berlin.
Oh yeah, I know. It's like Johnny Vulcan picks him up at the airport, and he's just like, that's what he tells him. He's like, oh, this car is this is what I use my share of the money on. I was buying this car, and Harry's like, it must be nice for you. I'm still under suspended sentence.
Exactly.
And that's also a theme in the or it's also brought up quite often in the first one too. I mean, I don't really think of Ipcress File as a Cold War movie because it's not really, the West versus the Soviets. The villain in that one really plays both sides. Definitely does that in the books. But there's this one scene where he and his former boss meet in the supermarket, and he's like, Harry, I want you to spy on your new boss. And then his new boss finds out about it, and he's like, why didn't you tell me about this before? And he's like, it's because Ross would have put me back in jail.
And that's exactly it. He always has that hanging over him, as the reason why he's still doing what he's doing, and he doesn't want to.
Yeah. So just a sidebar I wanted to bring up, since we're talking about Harry Palmer, is that I believe it was ITV in the UK did a 5 or 6 part miniseries based on the Ipcress File that we're going to get. I believe it's next month through AMC Plus.
Oh,
so most everybody that's seen it, that are super Lynn Dayton nerds like me, they've given it pretty solid reviews. So I'm looking forward to watching it, and I'm hoping they did the same. I'm hoping it gets that same in-depth treatment that Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy got with the miniseries.
British TV is not like American TV, where we have to have. It seems like we have a very short attention span. We can't see the long game being played,
right?
And you just get really bad television now. That's what I think I appreciate about the British TV.
I mean, quite honestly, outside of Bosch, and of course, the spinoff Bosch Legacy. And then the show that I binged between last night and this morning was The Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix, another Michael Connelly franchise. Outside of that kind of stuff, I really don't watch that much contemporary TV. It's just not. I find myself going back to the older stuff that we grew up with, or discovering things that aired back then that I never necessarily watched.
Or that you were saying, it was past our bedtime, so we never got a chance to watch it.
Right.
Or maybe it was just too, highbrow for us at the time. I think, gosh, NCIS, SWAT, trying to think of what, I mean, those are pretty much what I watch now.
Right.
I watch SEAL Team. I have Paramount Plus just for SEAL Team because I really like that show.
Okay.
But now that they're going to go to like movie format, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it or not. So
right.
I just some of the developments where they dealt with long-term effects of the special forces, being in so much conflict and, the abuse their bodies take, their minds take. I just really appreciated a lot of that SEAL Team.
Right. Right.
So Manchurian Candidate, we talked about, look, this has come out with Denzel where they did the redo of this, but you got to watch the original. It's just
right. And, to be honest, I've not seen the Denzel remake. I mean, I know, I think it was 2004.
Yeah. I saw that one first.
Oh, wow.
And then I went back and I watched the original and I was just like, oh, it blows it away.
Yeah. Yeah. But
it's a great movie.
Another book to add to your reading list.
Yeah. Well, and it made more sense back in the 60s when they did this movie because you could see you're coming out of Korea, you're coming, it just made more sense.
Oh yeah. All that stuff definitely went on in Korea.
Yeah.
He did not. Yeah. The author did not make any of that up.
Because it was another proxy war, East versus West.
Right.
Bridge of Spies. You get George. It's Steven Spielberg with Tom Hanks. I don't know what kind of contract they signed with the devil, but you get these two men together, they make magic with any of the type of Cold War, World War shows. It's just Tom Hanks is an amazing actor.
Agreed. I'm not sure I can think of a bad Tom Hanks movie.
I even like Joe versus the volcano. Okay, money.
I remember that, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
But, this Bridge of Spies is one that I saw in the theater at least twice, if not 3 times.
I get he started out as the comedic actor and Bosom Buddies and different stuff like that, but when he made that change, I don't know. It was like Philadelphia, maybe Forrest Gump, A League of Their Own. When he took on more dramatic type characters, he just blossomed. And then when Saving Private Ryan came out, I was just blown away.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then
all the campaigning that he did on top of that to get the World War II memorial, that was really.
And then when they did A Band of Brothers and The Pacific, and now they're even working on a new series that's going to be coming out soon too.
Yeah.
So
I think everything those guys touch turns to gold.
Yeah, and great writing, again, great casting. It's magic. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, again, we've beat this drum, but it's a great movie. It is a great movie.
Yeah.
If you enjoy
it's probably the quick way to get addicted to John le Carré, I think.
Yep.
I think I would point people in that direction first. And then if they thought it was like a really great movie, it's like, well, then, go take a look at the 2 miniseries that Alec Guinness was in, But no, that movie has just a great cast. Gary Oldman, as far as I know, has expressed interest in making a Smiley's People movie.
Oh.
But, this was released a decade ago.
Well, in Smiley's People too, you have the that bar that he goes into.
Oh yeah. That was a big deal back then. I think almost just like you expect that in movies nowadays to gain an audience.
Yeah, but that was more like oh my God, like I can't believe they put this in there, but they had to show it just how everything happens. You needed to see everything with Smiley's People. So
that was probably the most uncomfortable scene in both of those miniseries was watching George go into the Blue Diamond.
Yes. I'm like, that's Obi-Wan. No. Turn from the dark side. The Spy Who Came in from the Cold, another great movie. Again, it's from the 60s, but it's a man who deals with just everything with it and struggles with what he's doing, with what's going on. And it's just another great movie. Just honestly, just another great movie.
And that was Le Carré's 3rd book, and that was the one that really turned him into a superstar. The 2 books that preceded it that featured George Smiley as the main character, Call for the Dead and A Murder of Quality, didn't quite gain the following that Spy Who Came in from the Cold did. And when he was writing these books, he was still working for British intelligence. And that's why he used, because his real name was David Cornwell. And that was why he used the pseudonym, was because he couldn't publish a book under his own name. So this book came out and nobody knew who he was until one of the newspapers in Britain outed him And I believe he was actually still working in Berlin, and they had to move him to Hamburg.
So he didn't get picked up.
Well, I mean, now he would just have he would have a huge target on his back.
Yep.
But yeah, probably my favorite, one of my top 3 Richard Burton movies. The other 2 being Wild Geese and 1984. Who else of significance is in this?
There's
Cyril Cusack playing Control.
Yep.
And I remember Le Carré saying that was probably his favorite performance in that film. Because here you have somebody who, Cusack was an Irishman. And he didn't really care for the English that much because of all the bad blood between the two. But here he is playing, this heartless member of the establishment who has no problem taking this person, Alec Lemus, who, spent time with the Dutch resistance in World War II and had his fingernails torn out by the Gestapo, has no problem sending him on this false flag mission back to Germany to do something that he doesn't, he has no idea what he's really doing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the end result, what Control wants done ends up happening, but it has grave and dire results for just about everybody involved.
Yep. And that seemed to be a recurring theme in a lot of these type of movies, where it's that what the upper management thinks should happen turns out to be just absolute garbage. And like you're saying, the repercussions are huge.
Right.
And a lot of these people get away with it because there's no accountability for them.
Right. Right.
So.
And the other thing, up until the point that book was published, most of the spy fiction was there was no moral ambiguity. It was like you always knew that James Bond was on the right side.
Right.
There was no doubt about it. Okay. Harry Palmer, there's a little bit of ambiguity. But in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, there's a huge amount of ambiguity. Because if you remember, there's even one point where Lemus, leaves Berlin after losing Carl Remick, and he thinks, I'm going to get fired. And he goes and meets Control, and Control says, we do have the better system, but our methods are really just the same as the other sides.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that Le Carré tried to get across with his writing was, how do we, do the things that we need to do and maintain the system that we want to maintain. Yep. And it's always the constant struggle between, do the ends really justify the means?
Yeah, and Leclerc, he does a great job of that. So,
yeah.
Another great. Have you seen The Good Shepherd?
Yes.
Like
that was one. That was one where you did not want to get the large drink at the movie theater.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, that was 2006, and it runs about 3 hours. Correct?
Yes.
Yes, but it's a very good movie about the genesis of the CIA. Goes all the way back to the OSS in World War II. And
Dumbledore, the professor who's gay, tries to recruit, I can't think of the actor's name. Oh, good Lord. Good Will Hunting.
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, thank you.
Yeah.
And Alec Baldwin is this FBI guy, and he gets him to, turn over the documents to get his teacher basically deported and fired. And then he comes to find out that, he was really running a British, intelligence type thing to gather the names of all of these Nazi sympathizers. He's like, you ruined a 2-year mission for me. And he's like, oh, shit. But
Yeah.
it's just a really good movie. Matt Damon's character is an asshole, pardon my language, but considering where he came from, like that world that he lives in of very affluent privilege. And what I mean is, like, he's part of the Skull and Bones.
Right, exactly.
So these are like top tier families in the United States.
Right.
And considering that his kid, spoiler, sorry if you haven't watched it, his kid is the one that gets used by his counterpart for, the KGB.
Right.
And causes the catastrophic events of what the movie is based off of.
Right.
And you would expect he would be the one that takes the fall, but yet he had been collecting intelligence on everybody that he worked with.
Right.
And you don't find out to the end, like, oh, I would love to see what's in your safe that you have on everybody, because, your boss, magically we find out he had, hidden accounts, and you're just like, holy shit, son of a gun. And then, of course,
a little bit of Shawshank Redemption in there, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just going to run it. So when he then has his son's fiance killed because she's a Soviet spy, and he gets the tape delivered to his house when it's from his KGB counterpart that he met in Berlin right after World War II. And it's almost like a big, middle finger to him, like, hey, I'm one up on you now. Ha, 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 ha.
Right.
But yet he said, I'll do anything to protect my son. And that includes killing his fiance.
Right.
Like, damn, the dude is just.
That's probably one of the only American spy movies, I think, to show the true cost of being, the true human cost of being involved.
Yep.
In something like that.
Yep.
So it's definitely more something that would have been written by Le Carre than, say, Tom Clancy.
Yes, absolutely. Because Tom Clancy's always going to give us that star-spangled awesomeness kind of feel to it with all of his characters, where,
right,
this one actually shows that, he, like I said, he's a son of a bitch.
Right.
I mean, he took the letter, the suicide note, and hid it when his dad killed himself, and kept it until the very end when he burns it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
Movie.
Not that there can't be people that are unsavory in the Clancy world, because there are plenty of people that are unsavory on both sides. You don't really see that in the movie so much, but it's definitely in the books.
Yeah, and you see why you need to have somebody like him in that position, because of what you're going up against.
Right.
Who would, basically, he didn't want his son to join the CIA because he knew that puts his son at risk of being turned.
Right.
Which then puts him in jeopardy.
Right.
I mean, and I think he had, the girl, the translator, the German translator that he slept with in Germany. I mean, he has her killed after he sleeps with her.
That's right.
Figures out that, she's, spying on him too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just that dude's hardcore. So
you're going to make me break that one out. I've got it on DVD. I need to watch it again.
Yeah, I bought it on digital. So I just popped it in the other day. I was like, yeah, that's such a good movie. Yeah. 13 Days. This is my final drama. So I'm not a Kevin Costner fan, and I hated the accent. However, if you know anything about
my only criticism, that's really my only criticism of this movie. I'm not necessarily anti Kevin Costner, but yeah, that was a little bit over the top.
oh, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh God, just shut up, please. God, no. Waterworld all over again. But the whole, Cuba, it starts because of the Bay of Pigs, and then it goes into the Cuban Missile Crisis. It did a great job of showing, I don't want to say it, but like how screwed up the government truly was, and how many different times, at least the drama of it showed how the people that were put in charge of the military really wanted to go to war. And just when you think you would fix something,
you still have from World War II there.
Yeah, exactly. LeMay, all of those.
Oh, absolutely. I love Curtis LeMay, though.
Yeah, they would.
That was not his place, though.
Yeah, but
of course, General Taylor was the same way.
Yes,
but no, I felt like beyond the accent issues with Kevin Costner, that it's one that I own. I think I actually have it on Blu-ray now. But I mean, I remember going to the movie theater and seeing it and walking out and was saying that that was, if there's the only one thing I can hold against it, it's just the over the top New England accent.
Yes, and I get it. With American films, you have to have the dramatic scenes in it, and the different things, like when he's when you're flying over, don't get shot down, or he talks to the U2 pilot, and and he's like, do you believe in God? And you're just like, what the hell? Like, what does this have to do? Oh, I see. It's Kevin Costner trying to get an Oscar. Okay. Academy Award, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
It's like, those are the parts you just go, it's not necessary.
Right.
Now, I get the thing of, hey, don't tell them that you were shot. I get that. But, It's just, I don't know. But those were my best dramas. So that leads us to your choices. Again, you picked all of mine, which I appreciate that.
Right.
Oh, and you picked some great ones too. But I'll let you walk through them.
Okay. So the first one, Threads. Threads was the BBC answer to The Day After.
Yes.
Not sure if you can find it on DVD anymore. I did not know it existed until about 2014. And I found it on YouTube, and somebody had broken it up into 10-minute segments. So it was about 11 or 12 parts. I can't remember exactly. But it basically centers on if there was a nuclear war and it hit the city of Sheffield in the north of England, this is what would happen.
Yep.
And so you follow a young couple through the whole process. She ends up getting pregnant, and they're planning on getting married and having their own life. Even though they're very young, probably still teenagers. And you have this family drama against the background of what's going on between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. So there's a conflict in the Middle East and Iran that at one point we send the Rapid Deployment Force because the Soviets have gone in there and invaded. We send the Rapid Deployment Force in there. There's some rather large style engagements. The Russians use battlefield nukes, and so do we, and then everything stops.
Yep.
And then a couple of days later, all hell breaks loose. And the whole time there's protests by the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, which was a big peace group in the UK back then. We see that the leader of that group ends up getting rounded up because, this is one of the things that happens when you're on the way to war is that, these groups that might be anti-government end up getting rounded up. The phones are cut off. Sick people are sent home from the hospital, that don't have, life-threatening issues.
Yep, because they're getting ready.
And then all of a sudden, it's 8:30 their time. They talk about it's 8:30 in the morning their time, which means it's 3:30 a.m. in Washington. And, this is like the perfect time to strike. And then the Soviets come with the first strike. And then you deal with the aftermath from not only the day after, but weeks after, months after, and then eventually 10 years after. And you see that, life has gone back to the Stone Age almost.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where, one of the main characters, Ruth, she ends up having the baby and the girl becomes a teenager and she interacts with other kids and they can barely speak English. It's like they use this pidgin language that nobody can understand. And it's just, it's, I guess you would call it a docudrama now, would be the type, but I mean, it dealt with the, long-term after effects.
Which a lot of people didn't want to deal with when you're talking about these Cold War type of
right.
And,
there's a very good video on YouTube that you can find if you just search for Threads versus the Day After. It's about 45 minutes long, and they compare and contrast the two movies, and it's really good. The one thing that blows a lot of people's minds is it was a BBC movie, but the production values actually seem to be higher than the Day After's production values, to be quite honest. Like I said, I saw this in 2014 and it still scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And now a lot of people are revisiting that because of what's going on with, Russia and the Ukraine.
Yep.
And
I saw it
the saber
98 or 97. We have a supermarket chain. It's called Meijer. They had a video store.
Right.
And they had the most random selection of like war movies. I mean, this is when, video stores had, everything.
Right.
And I had a customer who knew I liked James Bond. He's like, you got to watch this. And I was like, oh my God, it just made you sick. And it made me think back to The Day After. And God, there was another.
Oh, wow. So you saw this well in advance of me seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
There was another movie. I can't remember the name of it. I saw it in school. It was about a kid who's writing to a basketball player or something about nuclear war. And I've got to find that movie. But I remember watching that in school and just being like, going home and my parents were like, what's wrong? I'm like, I just saw the most depressing movie about nuclear war and what to expect and the things that happen. And I'm just like, but that also put me on the path of going, I want to watch more of those. I really like these. But yeah,
it's almost like a train wreck. And I think people that, our age that, grew up with this hanging over our heads, we have kind of a morbid fascination with it. Whereas like you see these kids now when Putin's talking about, there could be disastrous, even nuclear consequences for getting involved in Ukraine, they're all losing their minds and we're all like, we've been here before.
Yeah.
and we had it that to downplay the current situation whatsoever, because I still think we're probably, we're a hell of a lot closer now than we have been in recent memory.
But I think it's also that it's like, people are freaking out. It's like, dude, we dealt with this growing up till, pretty much the Berlin Wall fell.
Right.
And Our parents, they had it worse because not only did they go through World War II, but then they had Korea, then you had
Right.
Vietnam,
Right.
then you had Afghanistan. You always had these type of, I mean, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Can you imagine that? Imagine living through that. I mean, that was real for people in Florida.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. And I mean, knowing that, living where I lived, and back in the Cuban Missile Crisis, my parents lived here too.
and you would have been one of the first ones targeted by the
Exactly.
Soviet Union.
Exactly. And I mean, I even knew that in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's funny because like I mentioned before, in my parents' circle of friends through church and whatnot, we knew a lot of folks that were in the Navy. And one of them was a weapons officer on a Los Angeles class ballistic missile submarine. And he helped me with the history project one time, and this was around the time of Chernobyl. And I remember saying that I was like really scared about that, and he's just like, "Well, they've done my job for me. They're nuking themselves right now."
Yep.
So,
Because it's truly what would happen if a nuclear bomb did go off.
yeah. So, right. So yeah, the day after, I recently I bought this on Blu-ray.
Such a good
Purely out of nostalgia. But I think the first time I saw that movie was sometime in the early 90s. So, the dire threat had gone away because it was definitely post Soviet Union. So it was either late 91 or 92 at some point. Still scared the hell out of me, especially the attack scene.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what would happen. I mean, even more cars would be stopped now because they did have some back then that didn't have a chip running everything. But most of the newer cars that were in that movie in the early 80s, they did have a chip in them that controlled everything. So as soon as that EMP hits, nothing's going to work.
And that's right. Okay.
Yeah, and just to think about that's how it might all go down was
You didn't see that until the night. Wow. I remember watching this on TV.
Well, really?
Yeah.
It's 1983.
Yes,
So,
I remember because it was.
I would have been 6. I was 6 for most of the year.
Yes, I was born in 76. So yeah.
You want a 6-year-old watching.
Well, and my dad worked third shift, so I got to watch a lot of stuff I wasn't supposed to. But I remember watching this like on ABC. I want to say it was like on Sunday nights or something, but it was like a mini series. Yeah, God, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe you know what? Maybe I didn't watch it on TV. Maybe I watched it on video. I could have, but I remember it would being on ABC on a Sunday night, like at probably like 8 or 9 o'clock.
Right. Right. But yeah, definitely it's definitely still a powerful movie, but it's nowhere near as scary as Threads.
No, absolutely not.
And I think that's a lot of that's because the target density of the UK was a lot higher than the US.
Yes, and I think too that ABC couldn't go as in depth as they wanted to. I don't think that ABC at that point was comfortable. It's still a conservative, as far as what it puts out, but they kept it pretty conservative.
Right. But yeah, there was a documentary that the BBC did back in the 60s. It was also a docudrama called The War Game. I think it was shown once and then like it was immediately banned. You can find it on DVD. But they talked about how there were more there were more Soviet targets in the UK than any other NATO country.
Yeah.
And
Because
whereas, the UK is relatively small compared to us, and we're very spread out,
yep.
that, I mean, you might be able to survive if you were somewhere in the middle of the Midwest, as long as you didn't have silos close by. Because we know, like, if you remember watching The Day After, there's silos all around Kansas City and Lawrence, where that movie was set. And that's how they know what's going on. Because remember, John Lithgow looks up and he's just like, they're on their way to Russia. And,
Yep.
it's going to take half an hour for theirs to get here and half an hour for us to get ours to get there.
Yep.
But I don't think that The Day After did nearly the job of showing the horror that Threads did.
And I think that we needed those movies kind of to remind us just at what was at stake. And
I think that actually President Reagan saw that, and I think he softened up a little bit once he saw that. Now, I'm not sure if he ever saw Threads, but I know he did see The Day After. And
well, it was mutual. What was it?
Mutually assured destruction.
Thank you. Yes, because that's what would happen. That was what we'd always say. Is I remember teacher be like, "Look, we have these drills, but if they launch, we're going to launch, and then nobody wins."
Right. Exactly.
But then you go, well, if they're a madman and they don't care,
yeah,
then it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And of course, that brings to mind a quote from another movie that neither of us listed, but War Games.
Oh,
what a strange game! The only way to win is not to play.
Exactly. God, I wanted to put that in there too. There's
some that fail safe I left off the list. Yeah. So we're going to have a part 2 where we talk about some more.
The ones we left off.
Right.
But, like with War Games, the only reason I think why is it didn't have the Russian it did, but it didn't, right? It was more so looking at our hubris as a country with creating this computer technology and not understanding what exactly we were creating and what could happen, and trusting that to run our nuclear missile.
Right. Exactly.
So, but God, that was such a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah. So
the fourth protocol, oh man, I can't believe I didn't include that.
Okay. So, based on a Frederick Forsyth novel, of course, he's known for Day of the Jackal,
Yep,
Desperate Isle, The Dogs of War. And back when he was writing these books in the 80s, he was always setting them a few years in the future. So this book was written in 1984, but it actually took place in 1987. And the movie's very similar to the book. The premise is that back in 1968, when the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty was signed, there were a couple secret protocols that were attached to it that weren't made public. The fourth protocol said neither of us will maintain or assemble offensive nuclear weapons on the other country's soil.
Yep.
So, all the stuff that's going on this stuff wasn't really going on in 1984 when Forsyth wrote the book. But when the movie is made in 1987, we know that Gorbachev has come to power. We know about glasnost and perestroika, and things are changing. And some people don't like change. Those people, including the KGB. So they come up with this plan of, if we sneak a nuclear device piece by piece, Johnny Cash style, one piece at a time, into the UK, and we set it off at the American air base, we can get Britain out of NATO.
Yep.
And we can basically dismantle the Western alliance. sort of like a last, like a last stab for them. So it stars Michael Caine in the lead role, who is definitely got some Harry Palmer influence in the fact that, he's still a Cockney. He's always going to be a Cockney till the day he dies, but he's got to deal with these public school educated Oxford establishment types that have no idea what they're doing. And of course, they can't stand him because he gets results. So slowly but surely, he starts to figure out what's going on. And his opponent is none other than Pierce Brosnan, as a KGB illegal who, like, Philip and Elizabeth Jennings from The Americans, speaks perfect British English, and he's able to infiltrate and carry this out, and comes pretty damn close to doing it. But there's, a lot of good actors in here besides just those two. You have Julian Glover, who, if you remember, Walter Donovan from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, General Veers from Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
Who else? You have Michael Goff, who, of course, was Alfred in the two Batman movies. Yep. You have Ned Beatty.
Yes.
And you've got Matt Frewer before he was Max Headroom.
Yes.
And he's playing an American, U.S. Air Force officer who lives next door to Pierce Brosnan's character. And they actually end up going to the base bar, the officers club, one night and having a drink and hanging out. And, unbeknownst to him, slowly but surely, this nuclear device is being assembled.
Yep. God, yeah. Pierce Brosnan did such a good job in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, it's got some action at the end, but most of it is just that very taut drama that the Brits are known for.
And I'm good with it. I don't need to have action on it's the story. And you're just like, how do they not know this guy is, you're just like,
right.
I'm trying to think.
That's one that I bought off eBay recently because it's not actually in print in the US anymore. The one that I got is it's a Korean DVD, but it's weird because it plays just like the US DVD, but I guess it's got Korean subtitles.
Gotcha.
It could be a bootleg. I don't know.
Hey, sometimes you got, if it wasn't for the internet, and sometimes you wouldn't find some of these movies.
Well, going back to Game, Set, and Match, that's the only way you're going to find that. You're either going to find it on YouTube, or you might be lucky enough, like I was, to find it on a bootleg DVD.
I'm going to check BritBox because every once in a while you can find some good British shows on BritBox. But
it won't be on BritBox. Game, Set, and Match. No, because remember I said Len Dayton owns the rights, and he's determined.
Right.
He's determined that while he's still alive, it will never be released.
I'll take it off YouTube. It's free. I'm good with that. But yeah, that's just God, it was such a it was a Tom Clancy movie. God, and I can't think of it. With Ben Affleck playing Jack Ryan. Why can't I think of the name? Thank you. Where that's the American version of the Fourth Protocol, basically. But that was set up by, neo-fascist Germans to get Russia and the U.S. to go to war, basically. But yeah, it's that, having that nuclear bomb go off.
Right.
Yeah, it's such a great show.
In the book, it was Islamic fundamentalists. But I guess that movie was released in 2002, and nobody wanted to think about that at the time. And you can understand that.
Heaven forbid we even think about that possibly could happen. I mean, who would have thought?
Right. But I mean, Clancy wrote that book was published back in 91 after Desert Storm. He was always a little bit ahead
And it was a broken arrow situation from Israel losing one of their nukes
Right.
that they weren't supposed to have,
Right.
But
Right.
the Fourth War, I don't think I've seen this one.
Okay. This is one that I just bought on Blu-ray. There's a wonderful company called Kino Lorber that every once in a while they have these Blu-ray sales where they have a lot of rare, out of print, very good movies that maybe didn't, make such an impact at the box office. But yeah, the Fourth War is one of those. It's got Roy Scheider and it's got Jürgen Prochnow as his nemesis, but it's still it was released in 1990. It's post Berlin Wall, but still pre-Soviet fall. So Scheider plays a U.S. Army colonel who's a Vietnam War hero, and he is stationed in West Germany on the border with Czechoslovakia. And he sees a refugee get killed trying to escape to the other side. And he just kind of snaps. And he starts to escalate things little by little with his Soviet counterpart on the other side, who's played by Jürgen Prochnow, who you may not recognize the name unless I mention Das Boot.
That's what it's from. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, I'm looking up the picture of it now, and I'm like,
yeah,
God, so familiar. Yes, Das Boot.
Yeah. So basically, yes. So basically, it becomes a very personal conflict for each of them. And it escalates to the point where there's almost, but not quite at the end, there's almost an exchange between the American and Soviet forces. It's sort of like, think of it as like, when you were on the playground, and say somebody at lunch challenged you. It was like, meet me after school on the playground. And like everybody hears it. And then, you and that guy go at it. And then like your friends are behind you and his friends are behind him. That's kind of what it's like. And so the name of the movie comes from an Albert Einstein quote, where supposedly he said that I don't know how the Third World War will be fought, but I know that the Fourth War will be fought with sticks and stones. Saying that, of course, if we were to have a nuclear war, there would be nothing left but sticks and stones to fight with.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I enjoyed it. I actually saw it. I never saw it in the theater. Pretty sure it was rated R, and I wasn't allowed to see those movies in the theater at that age. I remember seeing it later on. It might be on Amazon Prime.
It's on Tubi, free.
There you go.
And just to let you know, Threads is also on Tubi, free.
Well, it looks like I need to install the Tubi app on my TV.
And there is a absolute ton of, I didn't even think about looking at Tubi, but I just looked, yeah. Know what I'm doing tomorrow. Oh, yeah. So I'm going to have to watch that then. Oh, awesome. Oh, yeah. When the wind blows on there too.
So my copy doesn't come until Monday, I think. So
awesome. Sorry.
That's okay. No, I will probably watch that Monday night.
If you get a chance, it's an anime, but it's When the Wind Blows.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I completely forgot. You know how it is. This is almost like a grocery list. You come up with these things and then you go to the grocery store and then you get home and you realize, oh, I forgot these three things. So Failsafe was one that I was going to mention.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Well, both the original, but I don't know if you remember in 2000, CBS did a live version.
Yes, that's the one that I saw, and then I went back and watched.
Oh, okay, gotcha. But yeah, definitely When the Wind Blows. Killer soundtrack too, by the way.
And that's on Tubi Free too. Just to let you know.
Okay, but yeah, killer soundtrack. I mean, you've got David Bowie that does the title song.
Yes.
It's got Squeeze. I think it's Squeeze.
It almost has that heavy metal movie vibe to it, as far as that anime style with the music.
Right.
But the story is like, oh shit.
Yeah. No, I mean they're basically just helpless.
Yeah.
But who else? Oh, and then it depends on what kind of Pink Floyd fan you are.
Huge.
Well, like, are you more of a Roger Waters guy, or are you more of a David?
I love them both. Guy? Both. Absolutely love Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is I didn't discover them until high school.
Yeah. So, well, Roger Waters does a whole suite of songs on that soundtrack.
Yep. He did a number of different types, soundtrack stuff like that, where you're just like, damn. But yes. Huge Pink Floyd fan. I prefer Roger Waters stuff a little bit more so than the later.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I just know some people fall more into the David Gilmour camp. I like Pink Floyd, and then I like what I like what David did with Pink Floyd after Roger left. And then there's some people that completely disown everything after the final cut, and they're just like Roger Waters did all the way.
No, you can't. It's different, but it's.
I had a relationship that way that was the first girl I dated in South Africa. She was like, "Oh, don't tell me you're more of a David Gilmour fan."
That's like
that didn't end well.
I only like Genesis with Peter Gabriel, and I don't like anything after Peter Gabriel. And you're like, we understand that most of their success came after Peter Gabriel, right?
I mean, there's those people. I feel like they were a very powerful progressive rock band that was later turned into more of a pop band.
You know what? It gave me Phil Collins in the Air Tonight. I don't care. I love that song.
Yeah. Can't we all just get along?
Yeah. Well, the only thing that I get kind of touchy about is AC/DC, which I am a huge Bon Scott fan, but
yeah,
I mean, he died. So, I'm not going to, kill the band for it.
I got you.
But yeah, no. Pink Floyd, I don't care. Going to a laser light show and seeing The Wall or Dark Side of the Moon or, any of those, it's just, yeah.
Right. Okay, back on.
I apologize. I digressed. Gorky Park, what an absolute great movie. Absolute great movie.
Man, you want to see what a police state the Soviet Union was, watch that movie.
Yes.
Or better yet, read the book.
I've heard the book is, well, of course, everybody says the books are always better than the movies. So I may have to just pick that up. I might just have to hit my Kindle, get that out of, the drawer and see what books I can find.
Yeah. That's definitely one that you need to read. The movie doesn't do the book justice.
Go figure.
Well, I guess the biggest thing is that in the book, Arkady ends up going to New York, not Stockholm. And it's like, okay, I get that you changed it for probably budget reasons more than anything. But, the whole point was for him to see, he understands how things are in the Soviet Union. And of course, he's not exactly thrilled about it either. But then the fact that, he goes to America to pursue this fur dealer that's a murderer, and ends up seeing that yeah, there are some good things about America, but it's just as corrupt as the Soviet Union is to a certain extent. But the book definitely keeps you guessing. Martin Cruz Smith wrote a few, definitely a few more novels about Arkady after that. And they're actually right behind me. Let me count. So there's 10 to date.
Wow.
And the amazing thing about him is in the mid-90s, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And he thought he was going to have to completely give up his writing career. And he still writes, but he basically dictates everything to his wife. And she types it up. And they almost produce it as a team.
See, that's awesome that he's still writing.
Yeah.
I just kind of looked this up. I've never heard of this movie.
Yeah, so it's another, it's like Deutschland 83, 86, 89. It's a German movie. You can watch it with English subtitles. But it's all about the East German Stasi and the lengths that they went to spy on their citizens who they thought were subversives. And that's probably all I'll say about it, because I don't want to reveal too much about it. But there are some there are some serious betrayals in that movie.
There's some big name actors in this too from German films that different things that I've seen.
Yeah, so one of the main characters was the I can't think of the actor's name, but he was one of the East Germans in Bridge of Spies. The attorney that had the fancy Porsche.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it Sebastian
Koch?
Yes.
Okay, that's who I thought it was, but I didn't want to misspeak.
But then they've got like Max Weidman in it, Ulrich Tucker, and then Thomas Timey. I mean, I've seen him in a number of different movies.
Right.
Wow.
So okay. You think that Gorky Park makes the Soviet Union look like a police state? That's like a homework assignment, and then but the lives of others is a thesis. Oh no, this is how you do it.
I always thought that Berlin was always kind of like the test site for a lot of the police state type tactics that the KGB wanted to use to see how they worked before they started it on their own people.
Not sure about that, but it definitely that, East Germany was definitely definitely one of the more repressive, if not the most repressive police state in the Warsaw Pact. Romania, I would also put up there towards the top.
Poland had some issues too for a number of years.
Right.
Well, but Romania.
Right. But look at the, getting rid of the communist regime in places like Poland and Hungary and Czechoslovakia and elsewhere. It was pretty bloodless compared to Romania.
Right. And the Romanian, they had a number of genocide on certain people after World War II, whether it was, the gypsies or different.
Right. But that's, and they still lag behind the rest of the former Warsaw Pact. as
Yeah,
far
you've got
what's
you.
that?
I thought I had an okay grasp on Cold War movies, but you, sir, are a savant.
And there is there's a post on Joe Restored where I talk about like how often I'm going to post.
Yes.
And I think I call it "What's the frequency?" The picture that I use there is actually from The Lives of Others, where the one guy is listening in to the conversations of his neighbors.
Yeah. Okay.
One of my other followers picked up on that, and he was like, "Oh, I see what you did there."
Nice.
So
Now I got to watch it. It just I've always enjoyed those type of.
yeah,
I don't want to make that sound, but it's the intrigue of them just to get the understanding of what really happened.
right,
I like to learn about, have a better understanding. Yes, it's a movie, and some of it is dramatized, but it's based off of fact. So
right, right.
you know,
These
man,
people didn't exist, but a situation, that these people in which these people find themselves most certainly existed.
yes, absolutely.
That's probably the best way to describe it.
And then the final pick, the Russia House, was, I mean, I can't believe I didn't add that to mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, another John LeClaire. I mean,
Right.
Sean Connery, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really his last Cold War novel, because that was published in 1989. And then the movie was made the following year. And of course, Perestroika and Glasnost is still progressing,
Yep.
but some things never change. So, there's a British publisher that goes to Russia and ends up, almost by chance meeting a Soviet physicist who says things are not, as hunky dory and organized as you think they are in the West when it comes to our nuclear arsenal and readiness and everything else. And he wants to give him these books. And Barley Barley Blair, the British publisher, um, his Soviet contact wants him to publish these and make this public, and hopefully end the Cold War with the stroke. Basically saying, the emperor has no clothes.
Exactly.
So, and of course, like all the John le Carré movies, it's always, you struggle with the macro conflict between countries, but there's also the micro conflict between people.
Yep.
And he's faced with the dilemma. He's like, do I save, do I save these Russian friends that I've made, or do I do what my country wants to do? It's always that tug of war between, the macro environment of country versus the micro environment of family.
When you actually can see what the true cost
Right.
is.
Exactly.
Well, you can drop a bomb and kill, 30 or 40 people.
Right.
And it's different though when you're on the ground, you call in the bomb strike and you watch them die. I mean, that's where a lot of these movies with pronounce the author's name. I always mispronounce it.
Le Carré.
Le Carré.
Yeah.
That's what he does so well, is he shows you, I don't want to say like the true cost, but like there's relationships between these people.
Right.
There's
Right.
that respect that's and they see what the true cost is.
Right.
Where
Right.
at home they just think, oh, we're just getting rid of these spies. Well, they're people. And he puts that face to that person.
Right. Right. So Barley's choice in the movie is to put humanity above country. And he ends up doing a great amount of detriment to the Western Alliance, because it turns out all of this was a ruse by the Soviets anyway.
Yep.
And the book and the movie are different in the fact that in the end, Barley goes back to Lisbon in the book anyway, and lives in hope that the Soviets will keep up their end of the bargain. Because he's an unwitting pawn of British intelligence to begin with, and the CIA, because they want to know more. And then by giving his contact this list of things they want to know, they've done more damage. Because as the one character Ned says, played by James Fox, I don't like lists. Because lists not only tell you what the other side doesn't know, it also tells them what you would most like to know.
Yep.
And then that's when they stumble upon the fact that, okay, it's like Barley's actually giving them the secrets. And in the book, he sort of waits in Lisbon for hope for Katja and the kids and her uncle to show up. Whereas, of course, we know in the end of the movie, they actually do show up.
Yes, this is such a good movie.
Yeah.
I got to read the books now. I need to.
And not to mention my favorite, I'm a huge fan of movie soundtracks. That one is, well, Jerry Goldsmith is the conductor, but it's also Branford Marsalis.
Great jazz musician.
Saxophone. And of course, this is right after he worked with Sting on several of his albums. Because that was Branford Marsalis' ticket to the big time, was working with Sting after the Police broke up.
Yep.
So, when you listen to Sting's debut album, solo album, The Dream of the Blue Turtles, and then Nothing Like the Sun, and you hear a saxophone, that's Branford Marsalis. So, but yeah, no, that is a wonderful jazz soundtrack.
Very underrated. The people that knew how good he was, but like you're saying, it wasn't until he got the mainstream nod or the little, hey, that's saxophone. Well, that's Brad. And people are like, oh yeah, he's been around for a while. He's pretty awesome. And they're like, oh, but that was that little, rub that got him to superstardom. Or,
right. He had a couple solo albums before.
But he had played with a number of folks before. I mean, he's.
Oh yeah. But
absolutely.
Sorry. That's I think out of all the movie adaptations of John le Carré novels, that one has got to be up there with The Spy Who Came In From the Cold.
Wow. That's saying a lot right there.
At least in my mind.
That's saying a lot right there, how much you appreciate that novel.
But
as many as he's written, that's wow.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there's been a lot of movies made of his work, and some are good and some are not so good.
Yeah, but that's not a reflection on his stories. I mean,
no.
That's just G.I. Joe movies. Just saying.
Right. Yeah. So those are my drama picks. Like I said, it's like a grocery list. There's always going to be something you're going to forget, and we've already talked about the ones we've forgotten.
But I think it's nice that you've added in a lot of the ones that I would have, like Threads. I forgot about that completely. Just absolutely forgot about it. Some of these I'm like, oh my, I remember seeing, and I'm like, how did I forget? But you see so many, and it's just like you're saying, you go like, oh yeah, oh yeah,
right.
You're like,
right.
I think that should be another one we have to do. Best movie soundtracks. Just saying.
I don't think that we will ever run out of topics to discuss.
No, I don't think so either. The best The next section is the best action adventure because, the spy movies. This is what it comes down to. But for me, Red Dawn, the original, not the remake, the one with Patrick Swayze.
There was a
The one
remake.
with- yes, there was a remake of Red Dawn with. Oh, I think it was it might be both Hemsworth brothers.
All right,
Or-
well, that mind trick is not working on you because I was trying to get you to say there is no Red Dawn remake.
I'm sorry, but I am honest with
Move along.
Hollywood Bastardized is a great movie
Yeah,
because Red Dawn worked because it was the 80s. It worked because it was the Cold War. It worked because it was the Cubans and the Russians invading us instead of the Chinese.
yeah. This is the movie that John Milius swears got him blacklisted in Hollywood, and I'm not surprised.
I can see it.
He worked on, supposedly he wrote the final script for Dirty Harry, but he's uncredited. So, Don Siegel directed that movie, but John Milius apparently had a hand in the script, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, because it reads like one of his movies.
Yeah. And of course, if you've seen The Big Lebowski, John, the character that John Goodman plays, Walter Sobchak, is basically a parody of John Milius.
Yes.
Because the character in there, he was Polish, like Milius is, and was raised Catholic, but his wife is Jewish, so he converted. Remember, because there's that one, he's like, I don't roll on Shabbos, man. Anyway, this is one of those polarizing movies. You either think this movie is the greatest thing since sliced bread,
which I do,
or you think this is the worst. This is the most odious piece of right-wing propaganda ever made. Nobody falls in the middle. You either love this movie or you hate it.
I think if you look at it from that aspect of it being right-wing propaganda, you're reading too far into it. It's set in the 80s. It was the fear that we all had. After the invasion, the Bay of Pigs, and the Cuban Missile Crisis, Cuba was always that wild card. And
don't forget, the Cubans were also misbehaving in Africa too.
Yes.
Because they were also in Angola and all the countries that were surrounding South Africa, because South Africa was a bastion of anti-communism. Just like Rhodesia was. Because remember, Rhodesia said, we're going to go our own way.
Yes.
And they basically survived for another 14 years. And then, Robert Mugabe got in there. And the rest is history. That's why some of us have, the $100 trillion Zimbabwe bill. But anyway, we're not gonna make this political. And end of rant.
The other thing I think we have to think about too is, you had, the island that was, what island was the name of it? Heartbreak Ridge was based off of the movie Heartbreak Ridge. Was
Grenada.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That type of incursion of communism was happening in South America.
Right. Exactly.
And if you look logically at if Russia is going to invade, the last place that's going to get the most focus is going to be the West, which I'm assuming is like Montana, Idaho, that area where they were at, Colorado to some point. They're going to be the least populous area. They're going to hit the big areas first. So
Well,
I
I don't know about that, because if you think about, if you go back to the beginning of the movie where they kind of give you the exposition and talk about all the things that happen, and like the whole catalyst for it was the Soviet wheat crop failed.
yes.
Okay. So we know this is not going to be a nuclear conflict, because that would be scorched earth. They need food.
Yes.
And then all the other stuff that happens, all these countries start falling like dominoes. I would think that, yeah, they would, they would be able to be in Colorado and all those Midwestern states, like our bread basket, like the Ukraine was their bread basket.
Yeah, but if you need those crops quickly, yes, they may grow them there, but they all get transported to some major hub,
right,
for market.
Right.
So you're going to hit, the Texas, Louisiana. You're going to hit the East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah.
Where those storage items are. You're gonna need to get those areas under control first.
Right.
What I'm trying to get, I can see more of a stand being made by folks in those areas, because they could go hide in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And they could, at that time, put up resistance to where, you live in one of the biggest Navy bases in NATO. You're going to be the focus. They're going to lock that down as quickly as possible.
Oh yeah, we knew we were probably we were probably second after Washington, if not a two-way tie.
Yeah, and so that's, I think, if you look at it, I sometimes I don't think you can. If you look for something to be there, you're going to find it.
Yeah,
but if you
I don't think that the situation is the situation presented in the movie is entirely implausible.
No,
because that, it's like when Colonel Tanner gets shot down, and they're all sitting around the campfire, and like he's explaining, how everything went down, and they came in, disguised as commercial airliners. Well, it's like they did do that in Afghanistan.
Yep.
And all the stuff that they did in that movie, they had done before. It's like John Milius was just going off history. It's like, you don't think there were re-education camps in, Hungary and Poland and all the other satellites? Of course there were.
Absolutely. Germany, even in Siberia. What do you think Siberia is?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, the one thing that one of the funniest things in that movie is, when they go back to the town and they see how it's been transformed, and they walk past the movie theater, and the marquee says, it's like a double feature. It's like Battleship Potemkin and Alexander Nevsky. I love those movies.
But that's
I love those movies, and like and especially the soundtrack for Alexander Nevsky was done by Sergei Prokofiev, who later fell out of favor with Stalin and had to flee to the West.
Go figure that.
But have you ever seen that movie?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, it was made in 1938, and it's about a 13th century battle between what was then Russia and Germany.
Oh.
And so, the whole thing, the whole movie, even though it's about this historical event that happened, it's become a propaganda tool. Stalin uses it as a propaganda tool to tell the Germans, you better stay the hell away from us, because we did this before and we can do it again. So, those movies are Soviet propaganda, but they're awesome.
Well, and how many the U.S. had propaganda movies too. I'm just
Well, of course, and this is always brought up as a propaganda movie.
Yeah, but One last thing I'll say with Red Dawn, if you know anything about World War II, the young men who were drafted who lived out in rural areas, farms, different things like that, where they had to hunt and fish for a living, were usually your better marksmen compared to somebody who lived in a city.
Absolutely.
Because you didn't have a chance to go hunting if you lived in New York City,
Right. Exactly.
Detroit.
Exactly.
In Michigan here, we could go up north and we hunt. I mean,
right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
parents,
same here. I mean, my dad, when he was in the Army, he was a marksman, but that was because, he spent part of his life on a farm in Pennsylvania, and, he was always going hunting and fishing.
Yeah, because that's, how you would supplement your survival.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did it mostly for sport. It was a hobby, for him. But I mean, he'd been around guns all his life. So, kind of like I have. So, I mean, he was a natural marksman. And he ended up being a fireman in the Army, but anyway, that's a story for another time. The only other thing I will say about Red Dawn, whether you love it or whether you hate it, you cannot deny the impact that movie has had.
No, you can't.
When you get pictures of burning BMPs and other Russian vehicles in Ukraine, and somebody spray painted Wolverines on it in English, how can you deny that?
You can't.
So whether you love it or hate it, it's had an impact.
I hate this political spectrum that we're on. I am the middle.
Right. Okay? Most people are the middle.
But my thing is, there's no mandate on patriotism. You don't own it. Everybody does in this country.
Right. Exactly.
I fly an American flag. I own guns. I vote probably more liberal. I have conservative views on finance, but I'm in the middle.
Right.
I mean, it pisses me off that people take Red Dawn and turn it into either a propaganda for what they want, or it's like, oh, see, look at it. No, it was what exactly would happen if somebody invaded the U.S. You don't think a bunch of us pricks would go, oh, hell no. We're going to go hide someplace in the woods and we're going to pick you off. Guarantee you that's what's going to happen.
And I mean, I remember people saying, oh my God, this would never happen. That's happening in the Ukraine right now.
Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan,
exactly,
Iraq.
Exactly. It's happened all these other places.
I mean, if you want to look at recent events, when we went into Iraq, you had people come in from every other Middle Eastern country to fight us.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah. Well, that happened in Afghanistan too.
Yes.
So
in Afghanistan, that's where, I hate to say this, but, civilizations go to die. Giant countries,
exactly.
Every person that went in to fight in Afghanistan, it didn't turn out well.
Exactly.
So learn from it. It's too big of a country and it's too tribal to have anything happen. But
exactly.
Anyways, enough my soapbox. Firefox, if you're a G.I. Joe fan and the Night Raven fan, this plane is what makes this movie. The overall story, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to say it's hot garbage. It is a hot garbage movie, but God, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, this was based on a novel that some people consider to be the first techno thriller. Okay, you know how Tom Clancy's books were always called techno thrillers?
Yes.
And there were a couple other guys, like, the guy Larry Bond that he co-authored Red Storm Rising with. Larry Bond wrote a couple of books on his own. The first one was called Red Phoenix, which was about like a second Korean War. His books were called techno thrillers. Stephen Kuntz, who wrote Flight of the Intruder, and a bunch of other people, a bunch of other novels featuring that same character later on. His books bore that title. Firefox was written by a Welshman named Craig Thomas in 1978. And I have the book. I own it. but I've never read it. It's on my it's on my massive to be read. To be granted, I just bought it within the past couple months. I found a hardcover on eBay, and I was like, I love that movie so much. I should try the book out.
There's so many plot holes in it. I mean, I get it, but God, I love that movie. Just absolutely love the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're landing a plane on basically an ice floe to refuel from a submarine.
Yeah, and I mean, there's all kinds of issues about how dense the ice is and could it bear the weight, but
I don't care. It was awesome.
Disbelief,
But Clint Eastwood, I mean, it was just, I don't know what it is, but I love Firefox. I own the movie. I watch it.
Yeah.
Probably once a month. I mean, it just, I
don't
know. I just love it.
Wow. And I always wondered, in G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra.
Yes.
Towards the very end where Scarlett's flying the plane, and it's voice activated. Then she finally figures out she's got to speak in Gaelic to make it Scottish. I'm like, you guys straight stole that from Firefox. Be honest.
Well, there was somebody, I guess on Facebook or Insta, where they had 3D printed the wings from Firefox to make that jet.
Oh, to make it
look like it. Yes. And I was just like, damn, that's awesome. But you look at the plane and it's like, you guys totally ripped off Firefox on that, Hasbro.
There it is.
I shouldn't say, I know I say it, the movie's, it's just, the story is one of those most unbelievable stories, but I don't care. It's entertaining.
You don't think that could happen?
I think it could happen because I know that it has happened in some fashions. I believe that we had a MiG that it wasn't Russia, but one of its satellite states. Like the pilot defected and brought us this top, brand new MiG that was supposed to be, the top of the line.
So that was the Soviet pilot. He flew to Japan.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it was the MiG-25.
And then we airlifted a Hind or something out of the desert that had crashed or something. I know that it could. It's just how the movie was presented. It didn't age well from what I remembered as a kid. Because the first time I saw it was on HBO. And I'm like, this is G.I. Joe. This is awesome. And you watch it as an adult, you're like, this pilot has this many emotional issues. I don't think he would be a pilot, but that might be the person you would send over there to steal the jet because he's kind of a basket case as it is.
Yeah, but remember, he was like the only one that could do it because wasn't one of his was it his grandmother that was Russian and like she taught him to speak their language fluently?
His mother.
His mother. Okay. All right.
Yeah, where he could get away with it because he had the correct accent to do it and to pronounce it because of it being voice activated.
Right. Yeah.
So I just love it. So, I know people they're going to be like, but man, I love it. Any of the James Bond movies I would include in this just because it's James Bond, the Connery, and then part of, good gravy. No, you don't. Roger Moore would be Cold War. Past Roger Moore, when you get into Pierce Brosnan, Timothy Hutton, they're not. But those early Bond movies were completely Cold War. From Russia with Love, Octopussy, both of those are just great movies. Absolutely adore them.
Yeah,
the villains are always top notch. They're over the top stories. Just absolutely. it will suck you in and keep you entertained for that whole time.
Right. The thing about From Russia with Love in particular is, Spectre in the movies, Spectre makes, their appearance in the first movie. We find out that Dr. No is part of Spectre. Okay. The first 5 or 6 James Bond books, there is no Spectre. There's no Spectre until Thunderball, which was 1961. From Russia with Love was 1957, and he was actually fighting the Soviets.
Yes.
Rosa Klebb was not an agent of Spectre. She was a KGB agent. And, they wanted to lay a trap for him by making this the decoding machine available through the Romanova girl. And it's pretty faithful to the book, except for the Spectre aspect.
Which I get. You have to have a protagonist villain that builds the story. I get that, but right. I think like you're saying, you could have left it being Russia, and then bring in Spectre, as pulling the,
Maybe they didn't want to do that back then. I don't know. Yeah, Spectre did not come along until Thunderball.
Still, it was,
which was published in 1961. So,
and those, how many books Bond books have there been? There's been a ton.
Well, there's 14 original Fleming books, and then there's been a ton of continuation novels after that, and most of them are hit or miss.
But Fleming, he had 14 then.
Right. So Casino Royale was the first one, followed by Live and Let Die, Diamonds Are Forever, and then From Russia with Love is the fourth. And if you're going to pick up any of these books, make sure one of them is From Russia with Love, because that is my absolute favorite Bond novel. It's funny because not long ago in Spybrary, somebody asked, what are the top 3 Bond novels for everybody? 80% of people said From Russia with Love, Moonraker, and On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh, wow.
And the Moonraker movie has almost nothing to do with the book, except the fact that the villain's name is Hugo Drax. And it just goes off the rails from there. It's you can definitely tell they were trying to cash in on the success of Star Wars. And I can't remember if Star Trek the Motion Picture came out before Moonraker. They were both 1979, but I don't know the timing.
I think Star Trek did come out before then.
Right. So they were definitely trying to catch in on the sci-fi.
But space was a big thing then, because you had Battlestar Galactica. If you're looking at just TVs, Star Trek was still around.
Yeah,
Star Wars. So
right.
That's the jump the shark for the movies for me. Just saying.
Yeah,
I loved it, but I'm like, oh, come on, really?
Yeah,
he's in space. Oh, now he's gonna bang her in space. Okay, thank you. Okay, James Bond has literally done it everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give him the award. A newer movie that I absolutely adored was Atomic Blonde. And I'm not sure if you've seen that or not.
I have. That was actually based on a graphic novel called The Coldest City.
Yes.
By Anthony Johnson.
I've not read that, but
hang on.
Got it. I should know.
So there's nice. There's the first one is The Coldest City, and the sequel is The Coldest. It's actually a prequel, but it was published after The Coldest City.
Oh, now I gotta check those out.
These 2 graphic novels, this is a comic version of a Le Carré novel or a Len Dayton novel. It's that same gritty, realistic feel to it. Atomic Blonde, while I love it, they basically tried to make Lorraine into a female James Bond.
Yes, they did. Instead of letting her
I
just be.
own the movie. I watch it from time to time. It has an awesome 80s soundtrack. And I love Charlize Theron. Who doesn't? But yeah. They definitely tried to make her into more of a Jane Bond, if you will.
I liked is it James McAvoy? That's yes. I always want to call him Professor X.
Yeah.
I loved his character in it. Just his douchiness was like, damn, I love this guy.
Yeah. And I mean the balls to basically put on the stock uniform and just walk through like you own the place. That was yeah. But
and then my final selection is The Hunt for Red October, because you can't have a Russian submarine captain who speaks with a Scottish accent. But damn, that was a good movie.
Be careful, Ryan. Some things don't react too well to bullets. I'm sorry. No, I love Tom Clancy. I love the Tom Clancy books that Tom wrote himself. I am not a huge fan of continuation novels in general. But God, I love this book and I love this movie.
Yeah. I'm right there with you.
I watched this movie with people that I knew. The weapons officer I talked about before, he said, I can't find anything wrong with this movie. He's like, it's on the spot. You know, and
Clancy written work.
I hate to say it, but Alec Baldwin really was the best Jack Ryan. Not that I dislike Harrison Ford, but Harrison Ford, even Tom Clancy said it himself, was too old for the part. Maybe he's not too old in Patriot games, but he was definitely too old in Clear and Present Danger.
Yes, and
I mean, Clear and Present Danger went off the rails a little bit from the book. Almost much. Hunter Red October is very faithful. That's another one I need to reread.
Harrison's character just seemed a little bit, I don't want to, but weak for Jack Ryan. It's like he was
in games. He seemed to have it. He seemed to have everything together. In Clear and Present Danger, he's almost like bumbling through things.
Yes.
It's like, no, it's like that's not Jack.
No.
You know, and I mean, Jack is not somebody that wants to get involved in these situations, but when you cross a line, such as we see the line that's crossed in Patriot games, yeah, you know, that Marine's only buried so deep.
Right.
You know, it's not gonna take much to scratch the skin and have the Marine come back out. You know. That
do you like John? Do you think it's John Kaminsky in the Amazon series?
I like him. I like him as an actor, and I don't mind him playing Jack Ryan. I am not a fan of the show.
Okay.
They have changed so much. It's not even remotely faithful to the source material. And without remorse, do we even need to go there? The Amazon movie? No, let's not go there.
Well, oh shoot, Chris Pine when he played. What was
I like to forget that one too.
Well, it had Kevin Costner in it, and I just like,
Yeah, but quite honestly, like if I have to go to the bunker, this is the only Jack Ryan movie that's coming with me.
But Alec Baldwin does make sense because he's kind of that douchiness level that's perfect for Jack Ryan, which Jack Ryan would be because he's seen stuff.
He's a little cocky at times, and he does have a temper that does get him in trouble quite often. Baldwin fits the physical description much better than any of the other actors.
And has the same type temperament too.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that one, yeah, this one is the most faithful to Clancy adaptation. And, like so many things that Tom did back in the day, this was partially based on a true story. It didn't involve a submarine, but it did involve a Soviet cruiser.
That was trying to
actually, if you go on YouTube and you just if you search for Tom Clancy lecture, I think hopefully it's still up there. It's a lecture that he gave at the NSA about the inspiration for Hunt for Red October. And it's about him learning about the Soviet cruiser that almost defected in 1975. And that was the basis.
I will have to check that out.
So, this is one that I'm not sure. Does it really belong in the action adventure category, or does it belong in the drama category?
It was one of those ones where I was kind of him and hawing because I think it falls into both.
It could go both ways. I mean, you don't really have, there really isn't a whole lot of action until the very end. You do have some drama. You do have some drama in the beginning of the movie, and I'm going to quiz you on how well you know this movie. So in the beginning, when Ramius kills the political officer by breaking his neck and then saying he slipped on his tea, do you remember the political officer's name?
Damn. No, I don't. It's something silly too.
It's not something silly. It's something very prophetic. His name's Putin.
It is, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, Peter Firth.
Oh, damn. Yes.
Yeah, that occurred to me not that long ago that, oh my God, the political officer's name was Putin.
Freaking Clancy's master genius.
Well,
God,
he always maintained that everything all the sources that he used were unclassified.
Wow.
So,
well, and about the time that it came out, Putin was making his way through the government. So that would make sense.
Yeah, Putin, when the book was written, Putin would have been working in East Germany.
Yep.
But
which reflects a lot of his, the things that he's doing now to try to bring Russia back to that glory days of being in East Germany.
Yeah. I mean, all this, not to get too political, but this is all Soviet backlash.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly what this is.
Well, Clinton even told not Gorbachev,
Yeltsin.
Thank you. Good gravy. That this man doesn't believe in democracy when he was talking about Putin. I mean, they knew back when he took over that, he's GRU, he's KGB. You're putting him in charge? What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
God, now I got to go and watch that. Damn it. Thank you for that. And with that, let's bring on your stuff.
Uh,
Oops, shoot.
so the only one in the action adventure category that I can think of is one that I bought recently, which is Wild Geese 2, which
There was a second one.
This movie was kind of tragic in the fact that when it was being filmed in 1984, they were going to bring back Richard Burton as Colonel Faulkner from the first movie. And the whole thing was that he was going to be hired by this American TV network to kidnap Rudolf Hess, who was still imprisoned in Spandau Prison in Berlin. Okay. He died just after he finished filming 1984.
Yeah.
Because if you've ever seen that movie, you know at the end it's dedicated to
Richard Burton.
So they got Edward Fox to play his younger brother, and he's basically hired by the same plot, hired by this American TV network to get Rudolf Hess out of Spandau Prison and find out what he knows about why he came to Britain in 1941 and a bunch of other stuff. And like, does he know about any other Nazi sympathizers that are hiding in plain sight? So it also has Scott Glenn in it, who played Bart Mancuso in Hunt for Red October.
Yep.
And it's got Barbara Carrera in it. And if you know anything about Barbara Carrera, yes, she does get naked at some point in the movie.
Yes, like every movie that she's been in.
Exactly. Lone Wolf McQuade, I, the Jury. Have you seen that? The Mickey Spillane remake that had Armand Assante in it? There's just certain, during that time, yes, you knew that an actress would take her top off. So, and it does have a Laurence Olivier playing Rudolf Hess.
Oh.
So it's not really a great movie. The reason I like it so much is because it shows you what Cold War Berlin was like at the time. Okay. After Hess died in 1987, Spandau Prison was bulldozed because they were afraid it would become a shrine to neo-Nazis.
Yep.
And he was the only prisoner there. And the four powers took turns every month guarding the prison.
For one prisoner.
One of the things that, who knows what he took to the grave with him.
What they did, he was
93 when he died, I think. So, I mean, he could have died of old age, but there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that say, no, he was killed because, people were afraid he was going to spill the beans on a lot of stuff. So
I think at that point, it's so far gone that it's like, what are you going to do?
Well, who knows? But I mean, that's the reason why I like it. It's not necessarily a great action film. Yeah, they do end up, breaking him out temporarily. But it does show you a lot of what Berlin was like back then. And, you get to see the, I think when they break him out, it's the Brits month to do the guard detail. The Americans are rotating off and the Brits are coming on. So they all have to dress up like British MPs. And, you get to see what the uniforms were like back then. That's all it is. It's just a nice movie that shows what life was like back then. Cause I think we tend to forget.
Yeah, we do. Cause
we tend to forget what the cars look like, what the clothes look like, some of the corporate logos, what was the Pepsi logo like back then, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Coca-Cola. Yeah. All of them. Cause
it's just it's one of those guilty pleasures that it's just I watch it for nostalgia.
Now, I love your wild card pick because I almost added this to my drama. I know it's considered a comedy.
Yes, it is.
But if you've seen Doctor Strangeglove, it's like very tongue-in-cheek. It is, but it has a message to it. I mean,
yeah, I saw this movie for the first time in high school. I think it was like 1992 or 1993. So this is long after the scare of the 80s and the 60s. So I found it funny.
Yes, it is.
Now, if I had gone to a movie theater in 1964 and gone to see this movie when it was released, I might not think it was that funny.
It's true.
But it's just, with the with the aid of hindsight, you can look back and it's just like, but no, there's just so many good lines in that movie. And it's just, you've got Peter Sellers pulling triple duty.
Yes.
So, he's Group Captain Mandrake, who, a group captain in the RAF is basically the same as a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. So it makes sense that he would be the executive officer for a brigadier general. Jack D. Ripper. And I mean, George C. Scott is just, why he didn't win an Oscar for that. It's just, wow.
And at that point,
right here, this is the war room.
Yeah. It's
and I don't know which version of Peter Sellers I like the most out of the three.
He was such a great actor.
The president is just like, what a total pushover. It's like that part. He's like, of course this is a friendly call. If this wasn't a friendly call, you probably wouldn't have gotten it. But then, Dr. Strangelove was an amalgamation of several different people that were these nuclear experts.
Yes.
Werner von Braun was one of them. Of course, we wouldn't have NASA or anything without him.
Exactly.
And Herman Kahn was the other one, who he had written this book called On Thermonuclear War, and that movie I was talking about before called The War Game, he's actually interviewed in that and talking about various things and talking about, we need to make sure we have, after World War III is over, we need to make sure we have enough warheads for the next 4 world wars.
Yeah.
And just something like completely crazy. He was very out there. So that was kind of like Kubrick's middle finger to those guys.
And it's completely Stanley, when he has the movies he puts out there's a lot of that, like you're saying, the middle finger to a lot of people. And I mean, the guy riding the freaking nuclear bomb like a Bronco. I mean, you're just like, this is perfect. But it's one of those movies. It's just like, you see it afterwards. It's funny, but
let's not forget whose first movie is Dr. Strangelove. Who made his debut in that movie?
Who?
James Earl Jones.
Really?
Yes.
That was his first movie?
Yes.
Holy cow. I did not know that.
Yes.
Holy cow.
Yes. If I'm not mistaken, that's his first movie.
Man, talk about, man, this Hollywood thing's easy.
Where the hell is Major Kong? Woo! There's just so many. God, there's just so much in that movie that you can laugh at. In the beginning where they show George C. Scott with the secretary, the whoever at the base calls, and she's like, "Oh, we were just catching up on the general's paperwork." Now that girl, Tracy Reed, when they show the B-52 and they show Major Kong, and the camera angle is looking up at him, and he's looking real serious, like he's concentrating on his job, when he's actually reading Playboy. That's actually Tracy Reed in that issue of Playboy.
No kidding.
Yes.
God, talk about Easter eggs.
So, yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. And just
Awesome.
the whole conversation in the war room.
It's
Mr. President, I didn't say we wouldn't get our hair mussed, but no more than 10 to 20 million people dead, tops.
But that's what people thought. Yes, it's exaggeration, but it's what people thought about our leadership, that they didn't fathom what 5 million people lost would be like. So that's just hilarious.
I just love how when you see him and he's talking, General Turgison, George C. Scott's character, he's got all these binders piled up in front of him. And one of them, if you read the spine, it says world cities and mega deaths. Mega death being like 1 million deaths. And you're just like, who put that together?
I've got to watch that again now. I have to. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah, I remember the first time I saw it, it was on TNT. And it was, like I said, it was 1992 or 1993. And it was when they would have like a famous person host one of their favorite movies. And it was Hugh Hefner of all people.
Well, yeah, Playboy's in it, so that makes sense now.
Yeah. So he did it, and it was pretty funny. Then I ended up buying it on DVD later on.
I think it's on one of the streaming services, so I'm just going to have to.
It's I think it's on Prime, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm going to have to check that out again, because it's been a while since I've seen it.
I have all of them now. I just got Netflix back yesterday, so I could watch Lincoln Lawyer. So
I'm going to check that out too. I want to see that. We've got Netflix, I've got Prime, I've got HBO Max. We've got same thing.
Oh, I don't have HBO Max. Is the one I don't have.
I only have that because, honestly, of Band of Brothers, Pacific, and some of the other Generation Kill, another series I really love, is on there too.
Right.
So,
well, I'm a big DVD person. So
I have
in the library. The closet's not used for clothes; it's used to store DVDs and CDs.
So I have a 15-year-old now, and I used to have DVDs, but when my son was younger, he pretty much destroyed most every DVD that we had. So I learned early that digital copies work for me. If you can't get a hold of them, if they're in the DVD player and they don't get put back in the sleeve and get left out and get scratched up. So
right.
Yeah, like my Band of Brothers box set, just
Ooh.
Yeah.
I have that, and quite honestly, I didn't have HBO when the Pacific was on, so I ended up buying the Pacific DVD set blind. I don't regret it.
No, I loved Band of Brothers.
I was just like, I saw it, and I remember when it came out, and back then, that was when I lived in North Carolina, and our office, there was a Target right across the street. So I got it the day it came out, and I just went over there and bought it, and I went home and binged it, and I was like, oh yeah, that was. And in some aspects, I find that one better than Band of Brothers.
Yeah, I was
Like,
just gonna say I love Band of Brothers, but it focused just on the 101st,
yeah,
which I'm okay with. Where the Pacific took a number of different books and
right,
put them into one.
right. Yeah,
Um,
the biggest sources being Helmet for My Pillow and With the Old Breed.
yes,
And see, I had read those books before the Pacific was probably even thought of as a TV series. So when I found out that's what the books were based on, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be good.
and the casting of all of the actors was just spot on in both Band of Brothers and the
Oh
Pacific.
yeah,
The Pacific.
oh yeah,
Um, and to see where a lot of these actors have gone since then, you're just like,
right.
you know,
Whoever thought you would take Peter from Office Space so seriously, huh?
exactly. Or iRobot, and Freddie Mercury now. Oh, oh, he played Snafu in the Pacific. Oh God, I'm horrible today with names. This is scary. Uh, I can't think of the actor's name.
I'm blanking too. Sorry.
That's okay. But and then Sledge, I mean, he was in all those kid movies,
Right.
and he played that part beautifully. And to see him go from that gung ho, naive as to what war is to when he finished, it was just like, damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then Bob Leckie, I mean, Paige Bagley, the way he played him, it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
My favorite scene, I know it's going to sound stupid and hokey, but when I think you're at like Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, and you're saying the prayer or something, he's like, "What did I fight for?" And he's holding Vera's hand, and it's like he knows what's important at that point. It's like,
Right.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So, but okay, get off my soapbox again. So great picks for movies and TV. Absolutely. You could get a little bonus, even though we're going to probably try to hear, because I've kept Matt now for 3 hours plus. But, Call Sign Longbow, it goes with our Cold War theme here because it's pretty much based off the Cold War.
Yep.
And seeing what plans they have, the tracksuit guys kill me.
Yeah, and I when I mentioned that last night on the What's on Joe Mind live stream, I completely forgot about. Now I haven't seen the Hawkeye TV show, but back when I used to read Marvel, there was that Hawkeye maxi series, I guess, called Hawkeye: My Life is a Weapon.
Yes.
Where he ends up fighting these guys that were the tracksuit mafia.
Yeah, that's
And
pretty
then
much.
and last night when I said that, I couldn't completely remember where that came from, but I had to look that up today, and I'm like, oh, that must be where I grabbed that from.
Exactly.
The other thing is, I mentioned it was either on Instagram or Facebook when they posted that stretch goal. I said the Gopnik army must be achieved. It's like I must have. It's like I must army build the Spetsnaz, so I can do like a Rambo 3 or Red Dawn diorama.
Yep.
And I've got to have my Gopniks too.
Yeah, it's the figures for being the O-ring style figures are absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah,
they have reinforced crotches, which are nice.
yeah.
And they have the softer plastic for the hands, so you don't have the proverbial broken thumb.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm always going to come down on the side of something that's more realistic. Because I mean, as much as we love GI Joe, we know towards the the late 80s and early 90s, it definitely got away from the realism.
Sci-fi. The sci-fi was my
Yeah.
what the heck?
No, I mean, having said that, I mean, there's some things that we've seen in G.I. Joe that were futuristic back then, but exist now. But yeah, we still haven't seen purple camouflage.
Yeah. Or Ninja Force.
Just yet. So
yeah.
Yeah, no, this definitely this is definitely something that appeals to me more than other Kickstarters that have been done in the past.
And I think I don't have facts or proof because I don't know how many of the O-rings that Hasbro has sold because they've only put out Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. But it seems like for O-ring collectors, this gives them a way to build out what they already have in their current collection and give them that same type feel of what they had in the 80s.
Exactly.
And it also will help, I think, build out October Guard for folks.
Exactly. Because if you want to do that now, you're not going to spend hundreds of dollars. You're going to spend thousands of dollars.
Exactly. And you can't get all the figures as it is anyways.
And I do love the October Guard, but I don't love them that much.
No. And I think Hasbro's, that's the kind of thing. I get that they want to sell their main characters. I get that. The Snake Eyes body, because of the first 13 fits, a number of them that they can come out with. But I think when you can fill in gaps in collections, that you're going to sell more of them. Just saying.
Right. Now, this is something that's going to be very complimentary with your vintage Joes and, probably even your modern Joes.
And the guys are great. It's, just seeing them do the shows and the rounds. So I'm glad it's funded. I hope that it keeps going. I even bought a couple of them, and I'm not even an O-ring collector, but I want the American and the Russian. I want both of them just because I think they're awesome looking figures.
Yeah, no, I'm all in on this one. So,
well, they were saying on What's on Joe Mind, just there's a lot of people that went the all in route,
right.
And it's I hope nail as many stretch goals as they can, and I think they will.
Right.
So
and
that's it. Thank you all for watching. Matt, thank you for taking 3 hours and 40 minutes now, plus we talked beforehand. So this is a long conversation.
Thanks for having me. So hopefully Chris can join us next time.
Oh, we will. We're going to drag him along. He had some family stuff pop up, so we'll definitely do that. But I want to thank you, and I want to invite you back. So please, I hope you will. I'll keep bugging you. You're going to get a coffee mug. We have a special. My wife makes them for me now. They're welcome to the island. So this is an Island of Misfit Toys collector. So you're going to get a special coffee mug. So I will send that to you probably sometime next week. So I just wanted to say welcome to the family and thank you for joining.
Whoa, we're like the Stonecutters.
Damn right we are.
Assign me a number based on the order in which I joined.
3. You're 3.
Yes.
I'm number 2 and Chris is number 1.
In the top 5 in something in my life. I'm kidding.
Oh, that's too funny. I would again give everybody a shout out. Thanks again for watching, and you guys all have a great day.
Bye.